Chapter 2835. The bookshelf contains all the secrets in the world. Whatever you want to know is in there. Suyu stared at the bookshelf in shock. How much knowledge was contained in it? Yin Yazi's title as the Heavenly Book Downlord was definitely not for nothing. Yin Yazi hooked his finger and the bookshelf flew. One of the bookshelves flew in front of Suyu, and it was filled with tens of thousands of books. He took a book and saw the words Illustrated Guide to 10,000 Treasures written on it. If I want to find the other half of the bronze plate, I need to at least know what it is. Yin Yazi opened it. There were many treasures and pictures drawn on it that he had never heard of before. Take your time to search. I'll protect you outside. The bookshelf was an illusory object, and Suyu's real body was actually exposed outside. Moreover, the Nirvana Master was eyeing Suyu covetously. So how could he leave him alone? Suyu took the book and started reading it. He was very fast, but after he finished searching, he did not find anything similar to the bronze plate. There were still many books on the shelves. There were more than 100 million of them. Suyu took a deep breath and activated the time domain. He did his best to flip through every book as quickly as possible. Several days passed. Suyu had spent decades in the time domain. The boring reading put Suyu's mental strength to the test. He wanted to give up several times, feeling that it was hopeless to search aimlessly like this. However, he thought of Xie Xiaoya and the little Qilin. Suyu clenched his teeth and continued reading patiently. 10 days passed. He had already flipped through more than half of the books on the bookshelf, but he still hadn't found anything. He gritted his teeth and persevered, continuing to rummage. 20 days passed. Suyu had already read all of the books, but there was none. It was as if the bronze plate didn't belong to this world. No matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find it. There were no records. Nearly 100 years had been wasted. Nothing. Despair filled his heart. Where is he going to find the bronze plates? He suddenly heard a soft sound. It sounded like a chess piece landing on a chessboard, very crisp and clear. He glanced sideways. To his surprise, there was a person playing chess at the end of the bookshelves. That person was dressed in white, and his face was obscured. But the chessboard was very clear. There were several books circling around this person. Every book was golden in color. The words Heavenly Book were written on it. That young man, Suyu was a little surprised. When he received the wordless heavenly tome for the first time, he had seen this young man playing chess in an illusion. Now, he actually saw it again in Yin Yazi's bookshelf. Suyu felt as if he had entered some kind of consciousness. He tried to walk up, but the strange thing was, there seemed to be an eternal distance between him and the youth that could not be crossed. No matter how Suyu moved forward, the distance between them remained the same. After a while, the young man said another word. He raised his head, looked at Suyu, and said with a smile, "We meet again." Suyu was greatly shocked. "He still remembers me." With a smile, the young man flicked his finger, and a golden heavenly book flew over. Suyu caught the golden heavenly book subconsciously. When he fixed his eyes on it, he saw the words Million Treasure Illustrated Handbook written on it. It was the same as the books on Yin Yazi's bookshelf. "Your Excellency, this..." Suyu was about to ask, but when he looked up, the young man, the chessboard, and the golden book had all disappeared. Suyu ran over, but there was no trace of its existence. Suyu was really a little confused. He wondered if he had fallen asleep and entered the dark dream of the stone man. But holding the slightly cold golden heavenly book in his hand, he knew it was not a dream. Looking at the golden heavenly book, Suyu immediately opened it. In the end, the first item that caught his eye was a bronze plate. His pupils shrank, and his heart suddenly became excited. Looking carefully, there was a small line of description near the bronze plate. The returning ruins divine tablet suppresses all the spirits of the returning ruins and creates the divine objects of heaven and earth. The returning ruins divine tablet? Suyu finally knew the name of the bronze plate. Tens of thousands of years ago, the returning ruins divine tablet disappeared, suspected to be the work of chaos, and its whereabouts are unknown. Suyu was shocked. Tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, the Holy Mountain Emperors had not yet occupied the Holy Mountain, right? Looking further down, Suyu was even more excited. It was written in the heavenly book, describing the sacrificial refining method of the returning ruins divine tablet. As long as the sacrificial refining was successful, the returning ruins divine tablet would be under his control. At that time, he could rely on the mutual sense between the returning ruins divine tablets to confirm the location of the other returning ruins divine tablet. Great! So you could not help but exclaim. At that moment, the golden book in his hand quickly dissipated. Su Yu's heart tightened, and he immediately turned to the second page, wanting to take the opportunity to see what kind of treasure was described. But the strange thing was, no matter how many pages Su Yu turned, they were all records of the returning ruins divine tablet. Su Yu immediately understood. The golden book would only show what he thought of. His heart moved, and he thought of the divine nine-dragon cauldron. All of a sudden, detailed information about the divine nine-dragon cauldron immediately appeared on it. It was roughly the same as what Su Yu knew. The only difference was that there was a complete technique to control the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Su Yu's heart moved, and he memorized it. Just like that, the golden book disappeared without a trace. Su Yu could not help but feel lost. It would be great if he could look at the golden book a few more times. Of course, Su Yu was most curious about the chess boy. Who was he? Did he know him? Why did he meet him so strangely? Until now, Su Yu was not sure whether it was a dream or an illusion. Have you finished reading? Yun Yazi's voice rang through the bookshelves. Su Yu said, yes. The endless bookshelves immediately dispersed, and the real world was revealed. Yun Yazi's eyes were filled with anticipation as he asked, did you find anything in the bookshelves? Su Yu thought for a moment, then said, I found it. He wanted to ask who that young man was. But when he thought of his first encounter with the boy, when he told Yun Yazi about the latter's expression, he decided to keep it to himself. It was better not to worry Yun Yazi. It's the returning ruins divine tablet, Su Yu said. I will find a way to refine it. If I find the other half in the future, I hope you can help me, master. He had a premonition. The other half of the returning ruins divine tablet would not be easy to find. Of course, Yun Yazi heaved a sigh of relief, but he was a little puzzled. He had read most of the books on the bookshelves. Why had he never seen the record on the bronze plate? Or was it just a coincidence that the part he had not read had it? Right at that moment, the heaven-cracking ancestor suddenly rushed over and said, Master of the heavenly book, things are not good. The Lord of Nirvana is preparing to cross the abyss and head for the 9-star civilization. Hearing that, Yun Yazi's expression suddenly turned serious. Nonsense. Everything is not ready. If he insists on going, he will only destroy the Tao abyss. So, we must stop him immediately, the heaven-cracking ancestor said bitterly. Chapter 28:36. Inform the Devil Emperor and the others to head over together and obstruct the Lord of Nirvana, Yun Yazi said solemnly. He then turned to Su Yu and said, I have some matters to attend to, so you should handle them carefully and be wary of the Nirvana Master. Su Yu nodded. He understood in his heart that many almighties had plans to cross the abyss and head for the 9-star civilization. After all, that was a paradise that was truly unaffected by the destruction of an era. Strange, how did the Nirvana Lord manage to bring all the living creatures into the 9-star civilization? Su Yu was puzzled. If he wanted to go to the 9-star civilization, he had to possess the aura of primal chaos. If not for that, mighty being Du Meng would not have been able to enter. While he was confused, his eyes were suddenly covered, and a mischievous and deliberately suppressed voice rang out. Guess who I am? You're finally awake? Su Yu pried her hands open. Needless to say, it was Xiao Dai. He turned around to take a look. Indeed, Xiao Dai was still the same. However, at such a close distance, there was a faint connection between them that had never existed before. That should be a bloodline reaction. What? You want to sleep forever, bad guy? Little Butterfly rolled her eyes at him. Su Yu said, Now, our two powers should be able to fuse easily, right? Of course you can. Xiao Dai hesitated for a moment before taking Su Yu's hand. At the moment of contact, Su Yu felt the fusion of the primal chaos and the Dominator's power within his body immediately converge uncontrollably on his palm. Xiao Dai's power was the same. Both were formed from the fusion of primordial chaos and sovereign power. Thus, the two of them gathered their powers together and fused naturally without any hindrance. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. The great sickle of 10,000 tribulations. Both of them gripped the scythe at the same time. Instantly, the myriad tribulation scythe's entire body immediately burst into violent flames, and it quickly transformed into a silvery white scythe that was 200 feet long. At the end of the scythe, the 10 Taotai heads opened their eyes, especially the last golden head. In the past, Suyu had tried his best, but he had only managed to open it slightly. But now it was only half open. Suyu had yet to unleash its power, but he already felt a chill down his spine. No wonder Xiao Dai asserted that its power would increase exponentially. And now, as expected, I just don't know how powerful it is. Suyu was eager to test it out. He was desperate to find a test subject. Bang! A rumble suddenly rang out. Suyu looked up. In the depths of the inner abyss, a towering fireball erupted in the sky, blotting out the sun. Huge tongues of flame swept out in all directions. Along the way, it burned the sky. Suyu's expression changed slightly, and he immediately pulled Xiao Dai back. He retreated all the way to the edge of the formation. Only then did the flame tongues touch the array formation and were blocked by it. But even so, the formation began to tremble violently. It was as if the holy mountain was attacking them. Then, a huge explosion came from the depths of the inner courtyard. Let's go take a look. Suyu furrowed his brows. Was there internal strife in the inner abyss? The two of them rushed into the depths of the inner abyss. Discovery. The deepest part of the inner abyss was a cliff. Below the cliff was a mysterious abyss. The black and calm abyssal water seemed to be hiding countless man-eating demon beasts. Once they went down, they would definitely be devoured by the creatures inside. However, there was something extremely strange. In the center of the abyss, there was an ancient hall that had existed for countless years. Faint sounds of conversation could be heard from within the hall. Looking over, one could vaguely see countless people dressed in simple and unadorned clothes walking around in the hall, chatting and laughing. Lines of obscure and mysterious great path of heaven and earth were slowly uttered as they casually chatted. This scene, so he was no stranger to it. He had seen the same scene in the great void cave abode inside the bronze plate. His heart trembled. Could the bronze plate have something to do with the ancient hall? However, there was no way to get to the hall. It was suspended in the center of the abyss, with no way to enter. At this moment, many peerless strong men were trying their best to stop a giant ship that was preparing to enter the abyss. The flag of Nirvana was hung on the ship. The Master of Nirvana and the 18 Guardians could be seen at the bow of the ship. They were controlling the giant ship to force their way into the abyss, and they did not hesitate to fight with the peerless powerful men in the inner abyss. Master of Nirvana, if you insist on going your own way, don't blame us for turning against you, the heaven-splitting ancestor bellowed. The Master of Nirvana put his palms together, his face calm. Amiba, I want to cross the sea of bitterness. Why must you stop me? The Demon Emperor laughed coldly. If you want to die, go ahead. Who wants to stop you? However, without our permission, what right do you have to take away the invitation? Invitation letter? Suyu's heart skipped a beat. The invitation they were talking about. Could it be the Master of Nirvana said, I'm just protecting the invitation? The Demon Emperor chuckled. Nonsense. Many powerhouses made their moves and forcefully stopped the Nirvana warship. The Master of Nirvana frowned. If that is the case, I will leave the invitation here. If you can take it, it is yours. I will not ask for more. He flicked his sleeves. A pitch-black invitation letter landed on the ancient land. Suyu's heart pounded as he stared at the invitation. Isn't this the Tao Abyss invitation? He had obtained it in the Tao Tai's eye. However, he had no idea what it was used for. The Demon Emperor waved his hand, trying to grab the invitation. However, when the invitation fell into his hand, it passed through his palm like an illusion and fell onto the ground again. The Tao Abyss invitation was given to a specific person. It was useless for others to get it. This was the situation in front of him. The Heaven Bookmaster and the others stepped forward, trying to pick up the invitation. However, without exception, they could not pick up the invitation. The Master of Nirvana said indifferently, "Do you understand? The Tao Abyss invitation is fated with Buddha." He sucked in the air, tried to regain control of the invitation letter in his palm. But the invitation flew into the air, but it did not fly towards the Master of Nirvana. Instead, it flew towards Suyu. Pow! What shocked everyone even more was that Suyu held the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss firmly in his hand. There was a long silence. A peerless strong man exclaimed in surprise. He actually grasped the invitation? How'd he do it? Could it be that the invitation was given to him? The crowd burst into an uproar. The Master of Nirvana, who had been calm all along, shouted, "The human clan saint body, the Tao Abyss invitation is not something you can hold. Return it quickly." As he spoke, the Buddha's palm pressed down. He was trying to snatch the Tao Abyss invitation back. Yun Yazi and the others acted immediately, blocking the Master of Nirvana. The heaven-cracking ancestor laughed. Who was the one who said that if anyone got the invitation, he would give it to that person and not ask for more? Have you forgotten what you just said? The Master of Nirvana's face sank. He had never thought that Suyu would also get the Tao Abyss invitation. In fact, Suyu had not expected it either. He just wanted to give it a try. Chapter 28:37. So he wanted to try this one. However, for some reason, the so-called iron rule that only certain people could receive invitations did not apply to Suyu at all. He now had 2 invitations on him. The Nirvana Master said calmly, "What I said has a prerequisite. The holder must at least have a certain level of strength. The human race obviously does not have that. So, I did not go back on my words when I took back his invitation. What a quibble. The Demon Emperor and the others certainly would not allow it." He said proudly, "Nirvana Master, you can leave now. We will not stop you." Yun Yazi, heaven-splitting ancestor, and many other powerful beings stepped forward. "Nirvana Master, please leave the inner abyss. Please leave the inner abyss. Please leave." Shouts after shouts filled the air, all of them asking the Lord of Nirvana to leave. In the past, they still hoped to borrow the strength of the Nirvana Master to resist the destruction of the Holy Mountain. However, after experiencing so many things, they suddenly saw through it. The Nirvana Master would not help them at all. Instead, he ruined their plans. He was a malignant tumor that was extremely harmful to the world. If he wanted to leave, it would be for the best. The Nirvana Master looked around and said sternly, "Is this how you treat your companions who share weal and woe?" "Huh!" The Demon Emperor was the first to scoff. "Share weal and woe? We asked you to accompany us to attack the Holy Mountain. You said that life and death would take its course. When we were about to welcome the 3rd tribe, you decisively rejected us. When there was a king-level lotus of misfortune, you seized it without thinking. When there was trouble, you gave up without hesitation and broke into the 9-star civilization alone." The Demon Emperor took a deep breath and said fiercely, "We would rather not have a companion like you." Everyone looked at him intently. Their wills were unprecedentedly united. It had to be said, to be able to be hated by everyone was also a great skill. The Nirvana Master said, "You are making things difficult for me. You took away my invitation and forced me to enter the abyss." The Demon Emperor sneered. "First, you handed over the invitation yourself. Second, you wanted to enter the abyss yourself?" The Nirvana Master said indifferently, "That's not interesting. As we all know, it's impossible to go to the abyss without an invitation." He looked deeply at Suyu and said, "If that's the case, I won't leave for the time being. Go back." The Nirvana Lord acted as if there was no one else around and led the giant ship back. This action naturally caused everyone to feel disdain. However, there was nothing he could do. The strength of the Lord of Nirvana was there for all to see. "Suyu, stay by my side from now on. Don't leave my side." Yin Yazi took a deep look at the Nirvana Master's back. If nothing went wrong, the Lord of Nirvana would do everything in his power to get the invitation back. Suyu nodded and asked, "Master, what is the purpose of the invitation letter?" He finally asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Yun Yazi pointed at the ancient hall in the abyss. Do you see it? What's that? Taichu Palace. Taichu Temple? So you knew about the heaven, earth, mysterious, and yellow path master palaces. What was the so-called Taichu Temple? That's the hall built by the first pathmaster of the Taichu realm. It used to be the holy land of the Taichu realm. It wasn't until the chaos beings occupied Taichu that the holy land was changed to the holy mountain. Naturally, the Taichu Temple declined. Yin Yazi looked sad. The Taichu Temple used to be the holy land that all the strong men of the Taichu realm yearned for. Every 1,000 years, an invitation letter would be sent to all the pathmasters. With the invitation letter, one could enter the Taichu Temple and interact with many pathmasters. Moreover, one could listen to the lectures of the Taichu pathmaster. That was the greatest event of the Taichu realm. Unfortunately, the Taichu Temple today is no longer what it used to be. So that's how it is. Didn't that mean that the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss was no longer in print? Every time one was used, there would be one less. If you want to cross the abyss, you must go to the Taichu Temple and retrieve a leaf from there. Only then can you cross the abyss safely. Otherwise, you will be devoured by the abyss. Hearing this, Suyu suddenly understood. No wonder the Nirvana Lord retreated. Besides, the 9th master that I've been looking for you might be hiding in the Taichu Temple. What? Suyu's eyes shone brightly. There really was a 9th master in the world, and he was in the Taichu Temple? If he could get his hands on him in the Death Master's Yuan realm, then he could build a brand new divine 9-dragon cauldron. Therefore, remember not to lose this invitation letter, Yun Yazi said. If even our inner abyss can't hold on, entering the Taichu Temple is the only way out. Suyu's eyes flashed. If that's the case, why not enter the Taichu Temple now? The Taichu Temple had survived many eras in peace. It was obvious that it had the absolute ability to protect all the powerful beings. Yun Yazi smiled bitterly. It's not as easy as you think. The abyss can only be entered but never returned. Once you step into the abyss and reach the Taichu Temple, you can never return. You can either stay in the Taichu Temple forever or cross the abyss and enter the 9-star civilization. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, no one was willing to enter the abyss. Now, we are all trying our best to find the aura of chaos. As long as we can integrate it into our bodies, we can enter the 9-star civilization. However, we are still halfway and not fully prepared. The Nirvana Lord suddenly wanted to use the invitation letter to leave, which disrupted our plans. Fortunately, you took the invitation letter in time. It turned out that the powerful beings in the inner abyss were all preparing for both sides. On one hand, they were fighting against the destruction of the Sacred Mountain. On the other hand, they were trying to obtain the aura of chaos and seek refuge in the 9-star civilization. It's not easy to find the aura of chaos, is it? Suyu asked. He had Xiao Dai's help to finally succeed. The others might not. Yun Yazi looked at Suyu with a complicated look in his eyes. It's difficult, but it's also easy. Come with me. I'll take you to see someone. Oh, Suyu was puzzled. Was it someone he knew? Otherwise, why would Yun Yazi say that? Under his guidance, they came to the center of the inner abyss. It was an area with a restrictive formation. Ordinary creatures were forbidden from entering this place. Only those peerless almighties were qualified to bring people in. The seal was activated. A giant cage appeared before Suyu's eyes. In the cage, there was a beautiful man-made scenery. The bamboo forest was deep. The huts were hidden. The fragrance of flowers filled the air. Birds were chirping and insects were chirping. The warm spring breeze blew across the earth, setting off ripples on the lakeside. Suyu stood in front of the cage. He didn't quite understand why Yun Yazi brought him to see the prisoner. Moreover, where was the prisoner? Looking around, he couldn't find him. Suddenly, a layer of ripples formed on the sparkling surface of the lake. It was as if something was about to emerge from the water. Then, with a popping sound, a beautiful woman with a graceful figure came into view. Chapter 28:38. That face was etched in his heart. and he would never forget it for the rest of his life. Xia Jingyu. It was her. Yun Yazi saw the change in Su Yu's emotions and said hurriedly, "Calm down." He cupped his fists at Xia Jingyu across the cage. "Miss Qing Yun, please help us again. We don't have much time left." Qing Yun? Su Yu's mind buzzed. It was her. Her appearance and soul were both Xia Jingyu's. But the look in her eyes was different. Qing Yun waved her hand, and a fiery red robe landed on her body. She was dripping wet as she walked over gracefully. When she noticed Su Yu standing beside Yun Yazi, she could not help but smile. "You've come to the inner abyss, too." Su Yu felt conflicted. "You too." Seeing her reminded him of Xia Jingyu. "Master, why did you lock her in the cage?" Su Yu asked. Yun Yazi sighed. "Ask her yourself." Qing Yun responded promptly. "You misunderstand. It was not them who wanted to lock me up, but me who wanted to lock myself up." Lock herself up? Su Yu had thought that Yun Yazi and the others had deliberately imprisoned Qing Yun in order to seize the chaotic aura from her body. He did not expect her to be the one who asked for it. "Why?" Su Yu asked. Qing Yun looked in the direction of the abyss. "No one should understand my situation better than you, right?" So you thought about it and understood. Qing Yun and Sinful Lady were both vessels of Prince Mirrorflower. Their bodies contained a part of Prince Mirrorflower. A part of Sinful Lady's body had already been taken away. Qing Yun's was still in her body. She could be threatened by the Emperor of the Holy Mountain at any time. Sinful Lady could split herself into two in advance because she had cultivated a secret technique. She gave herself a chance to extend her life. But Qing Yun might not have it. If the Emperor of the Holy Mountain found out and took away Prince Mirrorflower's stone body, she might die. I asked the strong men here to build this cage to seal my aura so that the Emperor of the Holy Mountain would not notice it in time. In exchange, I helped all the living beings to instill enough chaotic aura so that they could have a chance to enter the 9-star civilization. Su Yu was relieved. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Su Yu asked, "Is the infusion process difficult?" "A little bit. In the past few decades, less than 1/10 of the living beings have succeeded," Qing Yun said helplessly. She only had time to successfully instill the Tao Lord of the Heavenly Book and the other powerhouses. The rest of the ordinary creatures didn't even have enough time. So you also felt helpless. His primal chaos was given to him by Little Butterfly. So how could he help others? Yun Yazi sighed and said, "It's the peerless powerhouses from before who were mistaken and trusted the Lord of Nirvana. In the beginning, most of the quotas were given to the Lord of Nirvana, his protectors, and his followers. In the end, after he was done, he immediately abandoned the other creatures and prepared to head to the 9-star civilization alone. At that time, Yun Yazi, the Demon Emperor, the Heaven-cracking Patriarch, and other powerful almighties had yet to arrive at the Tao Abyss. The rest of the peerless experts all followed the lead of the Lord of Nirvana. Who knew he was this kind of person? However, fortunately, Su Yu, you got the invitation. Now, he can't leave even if he wanted to," Yun Yazi said with relief. "We can delay until the Nether Abyss can't hold on anymore. By then, it would be difficult for the Lord of Nirvana to resist the enemy even if he wanted to." Su Yu understood everything clearly. Looking at Qing Yun, he said, "Thank you for saving me." When Su Yu broke through to the Pathmaster level, he was mercilessly bombarded by the flame of the way. Qing Yun helped him once. That was a debt of gratitude. He had to repay it. "No need," Qing Yun said in a low voice. "Then farewell," Su Yu said. Qing Yun nodded and turned around gently. But suddenly, a trace of pain appeared on her face, and she immediately turned to look at Su Yu. "Wait, what's wrong?" Su Yu, who had also turned around and asked. Qing Yun looked Su Yu up and down and asked, "You have something from Prince Mirrorflower on you?" It turned out, it was the petrified body of Prince Mirrorflower inside her that had sensed something and moved on its own. It caused intense pain. Su Yu pointed to his chest and said, "Here, heart." Qing Yun was in disbelief. "Can I take a look?" Su Yu lifted up his robe, revealing his chest. There was a hideous wound the size of a palm there. It was left behind when he had dug out his heart. Many years had passed, but the scar was still there. Through the skin and flesh, he could feel that there was an abnormally strong heart beating. Occasionally, one could even see shreds of gray color seeping out from within. What were you thinking? Qing Yun's eyes widened. Fusing Prince Mirrorflower's heart into your body? Su Yu sighed lightly. I had no choice. He briefly explained what had happened back then. After listening, Qing Yun shook her head. That's ridiculous. You are only delaying your death. In the end, you will become a stoneman. Become a stoneman? So he was not too surprised. How could he forget that half of his body had been petrified when he had used the holy body? I wonder if you have ever dreamed of Prince Mirrorflower, Qing Yun said meaningfully. Hearing this, Su Yu's heart thumped. He had really dreamed of it. Looking at Su Yu's expression, Qing Yun shook her head. It's too late. The heart has already taken root in your body. It's too late to replace it. Su Yu frowned. It doesn't seem to affect me much at the moment. Moreover, this heart gives me hope of survival. He did not think the Demon Emperor had done anything wrong. On the contrary, Su Yu is very grateful to the Demon Emperor. That's because you don't understand. If Prince Mirrorflower is resurrected, it will start from the heart. Qing Yun stared at Su Yu. In other words, you will also become Prince Mirrorflower's vessel. And then, the rest of her petrified body will gather in your body, and she will be resurrected with your body. Su Yu's situation was even worse than Qing Yun's. At the very least, she could remove the petrified body from her body. As for Su Yu, he was the sacrifice after Prince Mirrorflower's resurrection. Su Yu said calmly, that depends on whether Prince Mirrorflower has the ability to do so. He did not believe that he could not deal with a dead person. Qing Yun sighed. You have no idea how powerful Prince Mirrorflower is. Her resurrection is inevitable. Su Yu was cautious, but he did not take it to heart. He already had the troublesome Tao Tai's eye in his body. So what if there was the threat of Prince Mirrorflower's resurrection? As the saying went, when there were too many lice, one would not be afraid of an itch. There was nothing to worry about. What he should worry about now was the destruction of the holy mountain. I will be careful, Su Yu said. Prince Mirrorflower had already taken root in Su Yu's body. What was the use of being careful? Su Yu bid farewell to Qing Yun. Chapter 28:39. To prevent the Nirvana Master from launching a sneak attack on Su Yu. Your cultivation has already reached the peak of the Path Master realm. If you take another step forward, you'll reach the realm of the Heavenly Law Master, Yun Yazi praised as he sized Su Yu up. Cultivating for more than 200 years was not easy for a mortal without a strong background. So he was just about to ask someone for advice on how to achieve a breakthrough. Master, is there anything I should pay attention to when I break through to the Heaven Law Master? Su Yu asked. The Heaven Tao Lord was the highest level of the Tao Lord realm. In theory, it was a matter of course, and it wouldn't be too difficult. However, Su Yu had a feeling that it would not be easy for the Master of the Heavenly Law to achieve a breakthrough, especially when he had the sacred body of the human clan. That will depend on whether your path of the Heavenly Law is easy or not, Yun Yazi said. When you cultivate to perfection in the Tao Lord realm, a Grand Tao will appear. If you're able to ascend that Grand Tao, then you'll be able to break through the shackles of your body and become a Lord of the Heaven Tao. Perfection? Su Yu's current cultivation had reached that level, but his soul was slightly flawed. Only when one's body and soul reach the pinnacle could they be called perfect. Master, I will have to trouble you to protect me. When Su Yu had turned into a demon previously, he had devoured many experts, so he could digest their souls. In his inner vision, there were indeed several souls inside the pitch-black body. None of them were weak. At the very least, they were early-stage Heavenly Tao Lords. There were even middle-stage Heavenly Tao Lords. His soul was extremely powerful. Su Yu immediately manipulated the darkness to devour all of their souls. Wisps of soul energy fused with Su Yu's body. Time ticked by. 10 days later, his soul had finally reached its peak state. His entire person had reached the realm of perfection. He could break through to the Master of the Heavenly Law at any time. Su Yu was a little expectant, but he was also a little worried. Would his path to the Heavenly Tao be difficult? When he opened his eyes, Suyu felt that his body was slightly swollen. It was as if the energy in his body was too much for his body to bear. That was the realm of perfection. At this moment, Yun Yazi became solemn and said, "Hold your breath and focus. Circulate your strength and soul at the same time, and the path of the heavenly Tao will appear." Suyu's body and soul immediately surged with immense power. Instantly, a warm current rushed out from the top of Suyu's head. It floated in midair and turned into a path to the heavens. That journey was long and far, with no end in sight. Countless thorns covered the earth. The mountain rocks were jagged and steep. Suyu looked toward Yun Yazi and cast an inquiring gaze. Yun Yazi revealed a hint of joy and said, "Very good. Although it's a little rugged, it's flat overall and has a very high limit." Suyu felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. Such an excellent heavenly Tao path is extremely rare. Yun Yazi was full of praise. The flatness indicates that your previous cultivation foundation is extremely solid. You've walked up step by step and have never taken any shortcuts. The path to the heavens indicates that after your breakthrough, your upper limit will be far higher than that of ordinary people. Not everyone was like Suyu, who had managed to reach his current level step by step. Many experts had taken many shortcuts to reach the peak of the Tao Lord realm. This led to an unstable foundation. In that case, the drawbacks of breaking through to the master of the heavenly law would become apparent. Not only was the path to the heavenly Tao rugged and difficult to traverse, it was also exceptionally short. After breaking through, they would usually only be at the lowest level of the heavenly law lord realm. It was hard to have long-term potential. Congratulations. Yun Yazi smiled in relief. I can foresee that your future will far surpass that of an ordinary person. At the same time, many powerful beings in the inner abyss saw this path to the heavens. Is that Yun Yazi's disciple? Isn't his heavenly law path a little too long? Our heavenly law path back then was not even half of this person's. The only one who can compare to him on the heavenly law path is the master of nirvana, right? It can't be. Is there going to be an existence comparable to the master of nirvana in the future? No. A strong man with a similarly long lifespan said in shock. Even the master of nirvana's heavenly law path was not so long that it reached the horizon. Upon hearing that, the crowd, who was already in an uproar, was completely shocked. What? Does his potential surpass that of the master of nirvana? How is that possible? You should know that the master of nirvana was the only existence comparable to the divine ancestor in the last era. It was just that he chose to stay away from the world and was unwilling to participate in the ranking. The power of the master of nirvana was recognized in the last era as the only existence comparable to the human ancestor. Someone could actually surpass him? It was completely beyond their imagination. In a certain battleship, the master of nirvana looked up at the sky. His solemn face was filled with shock. Another human ancestor. The human race has been destroyed to this extent. Why are there still so many powerful beings? The human race in the last era was extremely glorious. There were many talents. Among them, the most famous was the human ancestor. He led the human race to unprecedented prosperity. He once became the leader of all races, making the arrogant creatures of the 9-star civilizations feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even the residents of the Chaos world felt threatened. They launched a great war of destruction against the human race. But even in the end, the outcome still terrified the Chaos clan. In the end, the human ancestor fought alone on the sacred mountain. He killed Jinhua Tianzi, killed the 9-tailed Tianzi, and severely injured Xiaoyao Tianzi. That kind of peerless combat power still terrified the Chaos clan to this day. Unexpectedly, an era had passed. Today, the human race had declined and became the 9th stream of all races. But among them, there was still a demonic existence comparable to the human ancestor. When he grew up, he would definitely be the reincarnation of the human ancestor. The master of nirvana squinted his eyes, feeling deeply threatened. They were walking the same path. The strength of Su Yu's potential determined how troublesome his future would be. However, a shocking scene unfolded before them. The path of the heavenly law began to change. The path of the heavenly law that had reached the sky began to spread into the distance. What? A second growth? How is this possible? The path of the heavenly law is fixed once it appears. How could there be a second growth? This is absolutely impossible. If it continues to grow, doesn't it mean that his future achievements will surpass the human ancestor? Countless people were shocked. The crowd was also completely excited at this moment. Surpassing the human ancestor, what kind of concept was that? Throughout the countless eras, the human ancestor was the strongest existence. He was the only supreme who could shake the holy mountain. If he surpassed the human ancestor, how terrifying would his future potential be? In the secret room, Yun Yazi was shocked and excited. His potential was far beyond Yun Yazi's imagination. Su Yu, you make me so proud. Yun Yazi could not suppress his joy. If there was an existence that surpassed the human ancestor. As a master, how proud would Yun Yazi be? Su Yu just smiled lightly and said, "It's too early to say anything before breaking through to the master of the heavenly law." He stared at the path of the heavenly law that was still spreading, feeling very calm. Chapter 2840. Because there could be countless unimaginable accidents along the way. When the path of heaven stops, you can step onto it and reach the end, Yun Yazi said. His old eyes were full of anticipation. He didn't know how long the path of heaven would be extended. At that moment, countless peerless powerhouses rushed over upon hearing the news. The first to arrive was the Demon Emperor. He stood outside the secret training room with a mighty demonic aura, laughing. "Sacred Su, congratulations." Su Yu and Yun Yazi came out. The former cupped his fists and said, "Demon Emperor, you flatter me." The Demon Emperor laughed. "It is the fortune of this era that a talent like you can be born in the void." Swish, heaven-splitting ancestor also rushed over. "Kid, I want to see with my own eyes what kind of level you will reach after breaking through to the master of the heavenly law. I want to see if you can compete with me." His fighting spirit was overflowing, and there was no lack of envy in his eyes. Then, the peerless powerhouses of the inner abyss all arrived. "I really can't be envious. Our lifetime achievements can't even compare to a junior. Ha! He is the sacred body of the human clan. Of course, he has great potential." Hearing their words, Su Yu only smiled without saying a word. He made it sound as if everything he had achieved was effortless for him. At that moment, Xiao Dai arrived with a group of people from the heavenly court. "You brat, isn't the path of heaven a little too exaggerated?" Xiao Dai looked very jealous, then turned around and said, "If there's anything you need help with, just say it." Yu Xiangwan and the others came forward to congratulate him. Their words were filled with sincere wishes. Su Yu sighed inwardly. Comparing the words of the two parties, it was clear who was closer and who was further away. "Since everyone is here, why don't you all witness my disciples' path to heaven?" Yun Yazi waved his hand. Hundreds of tables and chairs appeared. The tables were filled with good wine and dishes. It was a temporary banquet. Everyone smiled and took their seats. Who wouldn't want to witness an existence that surpassed the human ancestor? The group sat down happily, waiting for the path of heaven to begin. But the banquet was just about to begin. Buddha's voice fell from the sky. The Lord of Nirvana walked over with a smile while being escorted by the 18 protectors. To witness the birth of another human ancestor, how could I not be present? The Lord of Nirvana came uninvited. Moreover, he unceremoniously occupied the most central seat. He was at the same table as Su Yu, Yun Yazi, the heaven-splitting ancestor, and the Demon Emperor. He pushed away the other almighty who belonged to this seat. The man was angry, but he did not dare say anything. He could only leave dejectedly and go to a remote corner. "Why, does everyone not welcome this poor monk?" Nirvana Lord asked with a smile. Because everyone was looking at him with disgust. No one was willing to let the Lord of Nirvana come. Yun Yazi glanced at the path of heavenly axiom that might stop extending at any moment. He was unwilling to fall out with others at this critical juncture. "Of course you're welcome. Yin Yazi said indifferently. The Lord of Nirvana chuckled. Greetings. Then, he looked at Su Yu and said, the human clan's saint body. Congratulations. You're about to become the human ancestor. Even I have to submit to you. Upon hearing this, Su Yu immediately understood the Nirvana master's intentions. Death from flattery. He was purposely arousing the other people's vigilance and disgust toward Su Yu. Just as expected, many of the peerless Almighty seemed unmoved, but in fact, there were subtle changes in their eyes. Some of them even revealed their disdain on their faces. They were all old monsters who had lived for countless years. How could they allow themselves to submit to a junior? Su Yu was expressionless and unceremonious. He said, I should learn from the Lord of Nirvana how to treat other people as slaves. Death from flattery? Then I'll embarrass you first. It was not an exaggeration to say that the Lord of Nirvana treated the other strong men as slaves. If there was danger, he would let them face it. If there were benefits, he would take them for himself. He could even abandon them at any time. Upon hearing this, everyone stared at the Lord of Nirvana with unfriendly expressions. The Lord of Nirvana's expression did not change. He stared at Su Yu thoughtfully and said, I heard that the human clan's saint body and the holy mountain have a close relationship. I don't believe it at all. People were most curious about secrets. The other strong men were no exception. Upon hearing this, they looked unmoved, but in fact they were secretly listening. Su Yu said calmly, So, I, who had a good relationship with the holy mountain, destroyed more than 100 of them, while you, who had nothing to do with the holy mountain, were merciful and did not hurt them when they were at their weakest. His eyes turned cold, and he said mercilessly, Lord of Nirvana, your method of sowing discord is not clever enough. He simply pointed out the crux of the matter. Everyone was shocked. They immediately understood. As expected, the Lord of Nirvana did not come with good intentions. He had pushed Su Yu to the opposite side from the very beginning. They had almost been fooled. The Lord of Nirvana was much more suspicious than Su Yu. Lord of Nirvana, if you are here to drink, I welcome you. However, if you are here to cause trouble, then please leave. Yin Yazi's face sank. The demon emperor and the heaven-splitting ancestor also looked at him with unfriendly expressions. This Lord of Nirvana was always annoying. The Lord of Nirvana laughed and said, I'm just thinking of everyone's safety. After all, I can feel a very strong emperor's aura from the saint body. As he spoke, the Lord of Nirvana stood up. He purposely said half of what he had said and left the other half unsaid. This would make people even more suspicious. I will take my leave now. Take care of yourselves. After saying this, he left silently. Many people were left to speculate. Why would the Lord of Nirvana say that Su Yu had the Emperor's aura? Was he fabricating evidence to slander Su Yu? Su Yu sat still. He could obviously feel the anxiety of the people present. Su Yu said calmly, My heart is the Emperor's heart. Is there a problem? What? The crowd immediately became agitated and distanced themselves from Su Yu in fear. They feared him like a tiger. What is your relationship with the Holy Mountain's Emperor? Yes. Tell me, why is your heart the Emperor's? There must be an ulterior motive between the two of you. The peerless experts who were chatting and laughing just a moment ago suddenly started to question him. It seemed like they would not give up until Su Yu explained himself. Su Yu said calmly, Do I need to explain myself to you? There was no need to explain to such a person. What kind of attitude is this? An old man slammed the table. Su Yu looked at him coldly. What kind of attitude is this? They had all bluntly said that Su Yu and the Holy Mountain's Emperor had an ulterior motive, yet Su Yu still wanted to explain himself nicely. Perhaps they had lived for too long. They thought too highly of themselves. Humph! Right at that moment, the Demon Emperor snorted. All of you shut up. The Demon Emperor looked around coldly. I replaced his Emperor's heart. Why? Do you have a problem with that? Only then did the crowd fall silent. However, the doubts on their faces did not ease. Chapter 28:41. That's right. He's so arrogant just because he has potential. This man is too arrogant. He's a typical example of a villain who becomes arrogant because of his success. Hearing the people's unreasonable words, Su Yu was annoyed. The demon emperor had ordered them to shut up. It was obvious that none of them were dissatisfied with the demon emperor. However, Su Yu was too lazy to explain. They even said that Su Yu was a villain who became arrogant because of his success. He stood up and looked at the crowd coldly. I respect you as my seniors, so I don't want to argue with you. Don't blame me for being rude if you talk nonsense again. They had probably never seen Su Yu fight with all his strength. Among the strong men present, except for Yun Yazi and a few others, they could withstand a full blow from him. The rest of them couldn't fight him alone. In their eyes, Su Yu was just a lucky man who had become the sacred body of the human clan, but was actually very weak. That was why they dared to be so unscrupulous. They were openly slandering him. Many of the strong men were furious. The jealousy in their hearts could no longer be concealed. Yo, the Lord of Nirvana was right. You haven't even become an existence comparable to the human ancestor, yet you don't put us in your eyes. If you really become one, wouldn't we be crushed into the mud if we don't submit to you? Haha, the Lord of Nirvana is not a good man, but Su Yu is not a good man either. A villain intoxicated by success. Su Yu stared at one of them. This was the second time he had said that Su Yu was a villain intoxicated by success. The man was dressed in a black robe, and his face could not be seen from the outside. A villain intoxicated by success? You think too much. Su Yu instantly activated his sacred body. A giant 9-colored sword condensed in his palm. It slashed towards the man in the black robe. Swish! The power of this blow was comparable to the middle stage of the Heavenly Lawmaster. Most of the powerful men present were only at the peak of the early stage of the Heavenly Lawmaster. There were very few in the middle stage. The man in the black robe immediately ran into the crowd. As he ran, he shouted, "This is bad. The sacred body of the human clan really belongs to the Son of Heaven. Everyone kill the traitor." However, in the face of such a terrible blow, who would dare to block this attack for the people who had not made any preparations? They all ran down the mountain to avoid it. The black-robed man panicked and tried his best to resist this attack. Under his black robe, a strong Buddhist light flashed as he tried to resist the sword. The result was, of course, a failure. Chila, the black robe on his body, was immediately torn into pieces. It revealed its hidden body. It was a monk dressed in a kasaya. Moreover, they all knew each other. Aren't they the Lord of Nirvana's 18 protectors? This monk was no ordinary person. He was the last of the 18 protectors of the Lord of Nirvana. He used his Buddha's light to block the attack and immediately fled. As he ran, he turned around and shouted coldly, "Everyone, quickly attack. The human Saint Physique must have been sent by our enemies." Su Yu laughed coldly. No wonder. So it's the Lord of Nirvana's people stirring up trouble. It was very easy for people to blindly follow. Once someone took the lead, the others would follow blindly. This person hid his identity and fought tit for tat inside. He was just creating a commotion. It was all part of the Lord of Nirvana's scheme. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just telling the truth. You devil, why don't you surrender and wait for the punishment of the masses? Su Yu laughed. You escaped last time. How dare you stir up trouble this time? He waved his hand, and the great scythe of 10,000 calamity appeared in his palm. He struck it down quickly. All of a sudden, the 9 Tao Tai heads and one of the golden heads shot out beams of light that intertwined and turned into a dark gold color. It swept towards a monk. The monk's face turned pale, and he shouted anxiously, "Lord of Nirvana, save me!" From afar, a magnificent Buddhist voice could be heard. "Saint Physique Su, your murderous intent is too strong. Please repent and return to the shore." The voice was still in the air. A giant Buddhist hand descended from the sky and protected the 18 protectors in the center. The latter heaved a long sigh of relief and turned to look at Su Yu with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "You want to kill me under the nose of the Lord of Nirvana? In your dreams." Unexpectedly, Su Yu's expression was still the same. He stared at him as if he was looking at a dead man. The latter's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Right at that moment, A petite figure dashed out suddenly. She opened her mouth and bit the giant Buddhist hand into pieces. Then, the dark gold beam of light rushed in without any hindrance. It enveloped the 18 protectors who thought they were safe. An extremely shrill and miserable scream could be heard. The 18 protectors were killed on the spot. In the distance, the furious voice of the Lord of Nirvana could be heard. Demon, you have killed innocent people. I will not forgive you. So you laughed coldly. Do you think you are worthy of becoming a Buddha? His gaze turned and locked on the other 3 people who were leading the attack. Let me guess. The 3 of you were also sent by the Lord of Nirvana, right? So you said calmly. The 3 of them were all in disguise. They were either wearing black robes or deliberately changing their appearances. In short, they were hiding their identities. The 3 of them felt that something was wrong and fled immediately. Humph! Suyu's eyes were cold. He waved the great scythe of 10,000 calamity 3 times in a row. 3 arc-shaped coal blades slashed down rapidly. Creak! Their disguises were gone. There was no exception. All of them were the protectors of the Lord of Nirvana. One of the protectors was slightly weaker and was killed on the spot. The other 2 also fled with serious injuries. When Suyu was about to chase them, the Lord of Nirvana finally arrived and intercepted the 2 of them with a kasaya. His face was full of anger. The human race's holy body. You have killed innocent people. How dare you call yourself a holy body? The Lord of Nirvana was furious. 2 of the 18 protectors were killed in succession. I suggest we destroy his holy body, the Lord of Nirvana scolded. However, none of the people present agreed. With no one leading the attack, the peerless powerhouses were very calm. No matter how they looked at it, it was the Lord of Nirvana who was trying to sow discord. In the end, he failed and was the one who complained first. I object, Yun Yazi said calmly. The Demon Emperor and the heaven-splitting ancestor took the lead. The rest of the powerhouses also expressed their opposition. Yun Yazi said calmly, the holy body is chosen by the common people. It is not up to you to agree or disagree. As for those believers who don't know your true face, I think we should release them from the cavern world and let them choose whether to believe in you or not. The rest of the powerhouses expressed their opinions. They hated the Lord of Nirvana to the extreme. This kind of person could only confuse ordinary living creatures, deceiving their beliefs to gain power. The Lord of Nirvana saw that his provocation was ineffective and said, "Fine, don't regret it." The crowd sneered. They were eager for the Lord of Nirvana to leave immediately. What was there to regret about offending him? Drive away the Lord of Nirvana. The crowd looked at the path of the heavenly law again. What surprised them was that the path of the heavenly law was still extending. Chapter 2842. So you get ready. Yun Yazi's gaze turned serious, his face filled with excitement. The path of heaven was about to be fixed. So he also looked over. This journey to the path of heaven would not be peaceful. He had to be mentally prepared. After half an hour, the path of heaven was finally fixed. Its end had crossed the sky and reached the depths of the void. In terms of length, it was longer than the human ancestor. Let's go, Yun Yazi said. Suyu was about to leave. Suddenly, an indifferent voice sounded from the crowd. I advise you not to go up. Suyu looked over. The crowd immediately parted, revealing an inconspicuous short figure hidden in the crowd. The other party was also covered in a black robe, covering herself so tightly that her face could not be seen. Nirvana Lord, you still don't want to give up? A powerful person laughed angrily. He stepped forward and scolded, I'll take you down now. The other party sighed helplessly. With a wave of her hand, she took off her black robe, revealing a delicate face. She was not a monk, but a beautiful girl. What was even more surprising was Suyu knew her. Hong Yao, Suyu said subconsciously, then corrected himself. No, I should call you the Death Master. The girl in front of him was not anyone else. She was the Death Master who had deceived Suyu and the Heaven Court. She disguised herself as Hong Yao and hid beside Suyu for a long time, and finally escaped to the Tao Abyss. Unexpectedly, Suyu had not looked for her. She took the initiative to stand out first. It's been a long time, human saint body. The Death Master smiled lightly. Xiao Dai stared at her and said, "Should we arrest her?" Suyu shook his head. "Forget it. If she really wanted to harm me, she would have done it long ago." She had hidden beside Suyu for a long time. If she wanted to harm Suyu, she had countless opportunities. "Tell me, why are you stopping me from going to the path of heaven?" Suyu asked. The Death Master's eyes were dark. Above Suyu's head, there was a black flag. That was the flag of death. It was something that would only appear on the head of a person who was about to die. It indicated that this person would die within a day or within a short time. "You're dying," the Chief Sovereign of Death said succinctly. "My guess is that it has to do with the path to the heavenly Tao. For the next day, it's best if you don't go up." Suyu was skeptical. He said, "You should know that I have the destiny level domain." If his life was truly in danger, his line of fate would fluctuate rapidly. "I know, but you better believe in a Yuan Realm Master of Death," she said with certainty. "It's just one day. It won't affect you." Once the flag of death appeared, it would only appear for one day. Regardless of whether the host died or not, it would dissipate. Yun Yazi took a deep look at Suyu and said, "For safety's sake, there's no harm in waiting for a day. As long as the path of the heavenly law hasn't been completed, it will exist. It won't affect anything." Suyu pondered it for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Fine. I hope what you said is correct." But just as Suyu made his decision, the Chief Sovereign of Death suddenly let out a muffled groan. Blood gushed out of his pores, and his life force rapidly decreased. In the blink of an eye, his eyes turned white on the spot, and his aura was extinguished. It was as though there was a mysterious power that had killed the Death Sovereign in anger. The crowd immediately dispersed in fear. This was especially true for the peerless experts near the Chief Sovereign of Death. Before the Chief Sovereign of Death died, they could clearly sense an extremely cold and terrifying power descend upon them. He had instantly killed the Chief Sovereign of Death. "Retreat." Yin Yazi also sensed that something was amiss and immediately berated. After the crowd dispersed, they stared at the Chief Sovereign of Death's body, solemn looks on their faces. At this moment, they couldn't help but believe the Chief Sovereign of Death's words. Suyu's life was in danger. Because of her revelation, Suyu was forced to change his decision to ascend the path of the heavenly law. Thus, that mysterious existence had decided to punish and kill the Chief Sovereign of Death. As for Suyu, he narrowed his eyes and said, "If the Death Master could die so easily, then the word death wouldn't even exist." Papa suddenly. Applause came from the back of the crowd. Everyone turned around to look. They were the corpses of the 18 protectors who had just died. He stood up again and clapped with a smile on his face. "Indeed, the one who understands me the most is you." From his tone, without question, he was the Chief Sovereign of Death. The Chief Sovereign of Death was someone who controlled the domain of death. How could he die so easily? Just like back then, after his main body died, he was reborn in a woman's body. "You can believe my words now." Suyu nodded. "Thank you for telling me. Then, I will wait for another day." As his voice fell, some kind of existence in the dark finally lost its patience. In the sky above the Tao abyss, suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Streaks of blood-red thunderbolts struck from an unknown end of nothingness. When they fell on the ancient land of the Tao abyss, they penetrated the earth, revealing the abyss buried deep under the earth. At this moment, endless flames ignited over the Tao abyss. A towering giant palm, carrying intense flames, quickly pressed down. The palm was stone gray. It looked like it was forged from stone. It was very similar to the lime palm that stretched out from the Little Saint Mountain. The difference was the power contained in this palm was more than 10,000 times that of the Little Saint Mountain. As soon as it appeared, the entire Tao abyss shook incessantly. Even the abyss was shocked by the monstrous waves. Ancient god Julong, who was lurking at the bottom of the abyss, stretched out his body and looked solemnly at the descending giant lime palm. The Tao Lord of the Heavenly Book Path and the other powerful figures were all trembling. The giant palm, wrapped in the great path of heaven and earth, suddenly came crashing down. Under the palm, It was as if everything in the world was dust in front of the giant lime palm. What was even more terrifying was the giant palm ignored the powerful defense of the inner abyss and directly passed through it, bombarding the path of the heavenly law. Crack! A deafening noise resounded. The path of the heavenly law collapsed. It broke into two halves from the middle. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Su Yu's path of the heavenly law had been severed. The emperor of the sacred mountain, the demon emperor, the heaven-splitting ancestor, and the other nirvana, strong men cried out in surprise. They recognized it. It was the emperor of the sacred mountain who had personally attacked. Su Yu's path of the heavenly law was too terrifying, and it posed a great threat to them. Therefore, he did not hesitate to cut off Su Yu's path of the heavenly law. The path of the heavenly law had been severed. Even if Su Yu managed to complete the remaining half, he would only be able to break through to the level of the master of the heavenly law. It would be as difficult as ascending to heaven if he wanted to make any progress in the future. The peerless strong men in the inner abyss were angry and sorrowful. It was not easy for such a peerless genius to be born from nothingness, but the emperor of the sacred mountain wanted to strangle him in the cradle. Could it be that the people of nothingness would forever be enslaved by the emperor? Would they never be able to rise again? Of course, there were also people who were gloating. For example, the Nirvana Master. Chapter 28:43. He could imagine Su Yu's current expression. He must be furious and disappointed, right? Yun Yazi, on the other hand, was furious. Sacred Mountain, you are too despicable. All of Su Yu's hard work had been destroyed in an instant. No one would have thought that the Sacred Mountain Son of Heaven would not hesitate to personally take action and sever a junior's path to the heavenly Tao. Rumble. Everyone looked up as the other half of the path of the heavenly Tao that led to the horizon collapsed with a rumble. The new human ancestor fell just like that. It would never appear again. The people of the void no longer had any chance to make a comeback. They would forever become pigs and dogs reared by the sacred mountain. He slaughtered them again and again, then gave them some resources to fatten them up before continuing his slaughter. Their tragic fate would continue in a cycle of reincarnation. There was no longer any change. Su Yu gritted his teeth and leaped onto the path of the heavenly law. Before the path of the heavenly Tao completely collapsed, he still had a chance to try. Whoosh! His figure was illusory as he ascended the heavenly path. Everywhere it passed, the path of the heavenly Tao was surrounded by all kinds of great Taos, turning into endless flames that ignited the path. What was beautiful? The Tao fire reappeared. However, he was no longer an obstacle to Su Yu. It was more of an honor. The honor of witnessing the birth of the master of the heavenly law. Rumble. The great path was still collapsing, and Su Yu tried his best to rush over as soon as possible. After a while, when it successfully arrived, the other half of the path of the heavenly Tao had already collapsed onto the ground. In front of him was a cliff. There was no other way. His path as the Lord of the heavenly law had come to an end. There was no longer any possibility of advancing. At this very moment, he was still stuck at the peak of the Tao Lord realm, unable to advance. Every living being would only appear on the path of the heavenly Tao once. Once missed, it would never appear again. It is said that heaven never seals off all paths. Why does it have to seal off my path? Su Yu looked up at the son of heaven's giant hand that was slowly leaving. A look of hatred appeared in his eyes. He couldn't become the master of the heavenly law. What could he use to survive the destruction of the era? What could he use to save her former lover? Wasn't Xie Xiaoya's sacrifice enough? Wasn't Qin Xian'er's death painful enough? Could it be that little Qilin's departure wasn't regretful enough? Emperor of the Holy Mountain, Su Yu bellowed. You can't cut off my path, suppress it, or destroy it. He looked down at the path of the heavenly Tao lying on the ground. He used everything he had learned. The 7 domains converged to form a rainbow-colored palm, which grabbed the broken path of the heavenly Tao and lifted it up. However, the path of the heavenly Tao was extremely heavy. How could it be done by a human? With a slight rumbling sound, The path of heavenly Tao rose slightly before falling to the ground again. His power was still too weak. The chief sovereign of death hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth and slapped her palm against the top of her head. A ball of blood immediately appeared. "I will grant you your wish." With a toss of his palm, the lump of blood flew towards Suyu. Suyu turned around and was slightly startled. He took it subconsciously and said, "The bloodline of the Death Dominator." He couldn't understand. Why was the chief sovereign of death willing to give away her bloodline? In that case, he would lose everything. The Death Dominus let out a desolate laugh. "I've already been hated by the Sacred Mountain. I won't be able to live for long. Rather than being taken back by them, I might as well give it to you." The chief sovereign of death knew his own death best. He could already see the day of his own death. Therefore, he handed over his bloodline very decisively. Suyu was moved and said, "Thank you. If I can live until the beginning of the era, I will definitely give you and the Life Dominator a chance to be resurrected." Back then, the Life Dominator took the initiative to give her bloodline to Suyu and asked Suyu to promise that he could resurrect her in the future. Suyu agreed. Now, what was the point of agreeing to a chief sovereign of death? The dim eyes of the chief sovereign of death lit up, and he couldn't help but smile. "Thank you very much." After thinking about it, he rushed to the broken path of the heavenly Tao. With his remaining strength, he helped Suyu lift the path of the heavenly Tao. However, he had lost his qualification as a ruler, and his strength was weak. He couldn't withstand the pressure of the path of the heavenly Tao. His vitality was rapidly melting away at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Stop it!" Suyu shouted. The chief sovereign of death said, "I will die sooner or later. Why not help you one last time?" His plain and powerful words touched people's hearts. Xiao Dai immediately rushed over and glared at the chief sovereign of death. No way. She used the power of chaos to lift the path of the heavenly Tao. The actions of the two of them attracted the attention of many strong men. Yun Yazi said, "As long as the heart is still there, the path will not be cut off." He rushed over and joined in. The strength of the three of them was still very weak compared to the entire path of the heavenly Tao. However, they had already lifted the path of the heavenly Tao by 3 feet. The demon emperor laughed. "Lifting the path of the heavenly Tao? Ha ha! It's really unimaginable. How can I not participate in such an interesting event?" The heaven-splitting ancestor also complained. "This holy mountain is really despicable." He made Suyu unable to break through to the master of the heavenly law. "How can he fight with me?" The other 2 divine masters also rushed over. Many resentful and sorrowful divine masters seemed to have seen the last glimmer of hope. They all rushed over. Suyu was moved. He had many strong men to help him. Why should he worry that he couldn't succeed? He took out the exquisite pearl. Through it, Suyu quickly absorbed the bloodline of the chief sovereign of death. In a short time, he developed the Death Yuan realm. This was the first time. The 8 great realms he had cultivated all reached the Yuan level. The change in the strength of his realm was not just an increase of 1/8. It was an overall increase. The 8 great realms condensed into a giant palm and grabbed the ground, grabbing the path of the heavenly law. This time it didn't fall. The giant palm grabbed it hard. It was lifted up bit by bit, coupled with the help of several divine masters. A miracle happened. A moment later, with a loud rumble, the broken path of the heavenly law finally broke away from the ground and flew towards the sky again. It just needed to be reconnected. Suyu would be able to complete the path of the heavenly law and become the master of the heavenly law with the greatest potential since ancient times. The peerless strong men present were completely moved. One by one, they stepped forward. They were the only peerless strong men left in the void, across the 2 realms. Now, they were all gathered in one place, working together to fight for a junior in the void to break through to the master of the heavenly law. As they joined in, the path of the heavenly law rose at an even faster speed, but was still too slow. "Holy Su, give me the core of the evil crossing lotus," Lu Zu rushed over and said from afar. Suyu immediately gestured to Yun Yazi, who immediately returned it to Lu Zu. After Lu Zhu received it, he immediately shouted, "People of the third tribe, follow me." The strong men of the third tribe realized what they had to do next. Not only did they not resist, but they were also very excited. We are going to rebuild the path of the heavenly law. Chapter 28:44. Under Ancestor Lu's lead, they once again returned to the King Grey Dark Crossing Lotus Seat. Then, it frantically injected energy into the core controller. After obtaining the energy, under Ancestor Lu's control, the King Grey Dark Matter Crossing Lotus Seat soared into the sky and lifted up the broken Heavenly Tao Road. With its help, the speed of ascending the Heavenly Tao was even faster. However, comparatively speaking, it was still too slow. It would take at least a year to reconnect. As for them, he didn't have a year's time. It wasn't just the sacred mountain that was constantly attacking them. The path of the Heavenly Tao could not have existed for so long. In the process of ascending, pieces of rubble fell from the path of Heavenly Tao. In the end, the path of the Heavenly Tao was not a physical body, so it could not exist for too long. It had only been a day. One day passed. If the person who ascended the path of the Heavenly Tao never completed it, the path would naturally disappear. Right now, it was showing signs of disappearing. However, this was all the power they could accumulate. Suyu was extremely unwilling. Was his journey to the Heavenly Tao going to end here? No. He activated the power of his sacred body and formed a 9-colored palm. He grabbed the path of the heavenly law from above. One was a palm with 8 elemental domains. It was a palm with the power of the 9-colored sacred body. All the power he had in his life was unleashed at this moment. However, the effect was minimal. His path of the Heavenly Tao was too long and heavy. It was impossible to lift it up quickly. Yin Yazi and the others gritted their teeth and persevered, but the rest had the intention to give up. It's much heavier than we imagined. Perhaps what we're doing is useless, someone muttered. The Demon Emperor said loudly, "How can you talk about giving up until the very last moment?" He unleashed all the magic in his body, contributing as much of his power as possible. Everyone was greatly encouraged and gave it their all. It was a pity the path of the Heavenly Tao was still difficult to carry. Furthermore, one could faintly hear the sound of something breaking from within the path of the Heavenly Tao. Perhaps they didn't have to wait for them to carry it up. The path of the Heavenly Tao was so heavy that it was crushing him. The path of defying the heavens and repeating the Heavenly Tao was something that was difficult to continue. How difficult would it be to succeed? Suyu's eyes were filled with determination. He didn't even hesitate to speed up his heartbeat, urging it to release more power. In an instant, his saint body had reached the quasi-perfection stage. His strength skyrocketed. It actually increased the speed of ascending the path of the Heavenly Tao by around 30%. This was Suyu's full power. However, even so, it was still too slow. He had no time. There was no more time. Crack. At this moment, the path of Heavenly Tao produced an even clearer cracking sound. A crack the width of an arm appeared on its surface. Moreover, the crack was still expanding. It wouldn't be long before it broke into two. At this critical juncture, from the abyss, suddenly there was the sound of violent waves. He looked down. From that abyss, a towering figure that was tens of thousands of zhang tall actually stood up. His body was covered with bulging muscles. His body was filled with an ancient aura. Traces of age seemed to be carved into his body, never to be erased. His eyes were empty, a sign that he had been dead for a long time. However, the remnant within his body was unprecedented, vast like the heavens. Human ancestor. It's the human ancestor. He didn't leave. Not long after the Runzu arrived at the Tao Abyss, he entered the abyss alone and crossed it. She thought that he had already left. Who would have thought that he would actually return? What shocked them even more was the abyss was a place of no return. Any living being that entered it would evolve into an abyssal creature. Ancient god Jiulong was an example. He went from being a living being to being neither a human nor a ghost, and he would never be able to leave the abyss. For an entire epoch, he had been trapped there. But the human ancestor, He could come and go as he pleased. Apart from the fact that his muscles had become more solid, there were no wounds on his body. The human ancestor walked out of the abyss. Without saying a word, he walked to the bottom of the path of heavenly Tao. He extended an arm and stopped the path of heavenly Tao. Then a shocking scene appeared. The path of heavenly Tao rose at a speed faster than it fell. Yun Yazi and the others were being carried up. The experts let go of the path of heavenly Tao. They watched in shock as the human ancestor carried the path of heavenly Tao back into the sky. The human ancestor, what realm is he at? The heaven-shattering patriarch swallowed hard. Why do I feel like he's not much weaker after death? His strength alone was stronger than everyone else present. Yin Yazi was shocked. This is probably what it means to challenge the sacred mountain alone. It's unimaginable. The demon emperor was also shocked. I once heard from the 9th-ranked sacred ancestor that the other 8 ancestors were merely a foil to the human ancestor. They were not on the same level at all. The demon emperor was second only to the 9 sacred ancestors in the previous epoch. His strength was earth-shattering. But now, seeing the human ancestor's corpse in action, he felt inferior. Even if the human ancestor had died for an epoch, he would still be far behind. Someone actually compared the Lord of Nirvana to the human ancestor. They're not on the same level at all. Okay? Someone muttered. They had fought the Lord of Nirvana before. They could suppress the Lord of Nirvana if they joined forces. But the human ancestor? Joined forces against him? They shuddered at the thought of it. A single slap from the human ancestor was enough to annihilate all of them. With the human ancestor's unparalleled mystique, he quickly lifted the path of heavenly Tao and returned to its original trajectory. Its huge body was like a pillar that supported the heavens, supporting the path of the heavenly Tao. Clang! The 2 segments of the path of heavenly Tao met again. The path was connected. However, at this moment, the sky turned fiery red again. A giant petrified hand fell at an even faster speed, attacking the path of heavenly Tao. It tried to shatter it. The strong men below were shocked when they saw this. The emperor was determined to stop Su Yu from breaking through to the master of heavenly law, so much so that he had to attack twice. Thinking back to what they had just done, even if they succeeded, how could they withstand a blow from the emperor? And the human ancestor, would he be able to withstand it? After all, he had been dead for an epoch. The mighty power he had was no longer what it used to be. The human ancestor stood where he was. He raised his empty eyes and let out a deafening roar. Holy mountain disciple, destroy the world. He stretched out his remaining right palm, went up against the sky, and fiercely punched towards Tianzi. Rumble! A violent roar swept across the area like an explosion. The entire Tao abyss was shaking. Retreat, Yin Yazi said in shock. He immediately led all the creatures to retreat. The emperor and the human ancestor were fighting. It was not something they could interfere with. Not just them. Even the holy mountain outside the formation was retreating crazily. They were afraid of being affected. Only Su Yu. He could not leave. He stood at the edge of the cliff, clenching his teeth and holding on, watching the 2 fight again. The human ancestor stood where he was, motionless. Chapter 28:45. Moreover, a large area of cracks had appeared on it, and within the cracks, drops of the emperor's blood were dripping. It was obvious who was stronger between the 2. From the end of the sky, a roar of unwillingness rang out. Rinzu, you are still so difficult to deal with even after death. No, you are not dead. That voice. So he was no stranger to it. It was Emperor Xiaoyao. He went from flustered and exasperated to frightened and fearful. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Su Yu took a step forward and stepped onto the broken path of the heavenly law. Why would he not dare to step onto the path paved by the human ancestor? The emperor noticed and said coldly, "Aunt, the heavenly law does not allow it. Step back." The giant petrified palm came crashing down again. What he got in response was a violent punch from the human ancestor. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion. The emperor's palm was once again blasted back. However, the appearance of the human ancestor had warned the emperors. They could not allow another powerful existence like the human ancestor to appear. And Suyu, not only did he have the qualifications, but his potential even surpassed the human ancestor. In the future, he was destined to be the mortal enemy of the Holy Mountain. How could they allow him to succeed today? Boom, boom, boom. Two petrified palms appear at the same time. One shot towards a human ancestor, the other towards the path of the heavenly law that Suyu was heading towards. They vowed to shatter the path of the heavenly law into pieces, to completely sever Suyu's path of the heavenly law. The human ancestor lifted the path of the heavenly law with one hand. With only one hand left, it was difficult to defend against two fists. At this juncture, the human ancestor blew out a mouthful of turbid air. That air was something unknown, but it actually held up the path of the heavenly law, preventing it from falling. He pulled out both hands and punched towards the Emperor's fists. Bang! A muffled groan came from the darkness. Emperor Xiao Yao's fists were shattered into pieces and were about to fall off. An era has passed, and you have not improved at all. How disappointing. The human ancestor raised his head and took a step forward. Suddenly, he rose to the heavens. Then, there was the sound of a fierce battle, and the roars of the Emperor. In the sky, blood flew like a storm, sprinkling all over the earth. That was the blood of the Emperor. Rumble suddenly. A giant petrified palm descended from the sky and smashed heavily onto the ancient continent of the Tao Abyss. A long crack appeared on the continent, revealing the abyss buried deep underground. Tianzi's palm was torn off. The Son of Heaven roared again and again, but his voice gradually faded away, as if he was retreating. In that case, the human ancestor finally returned. All living beings trembled in fear. Even an era after his death, he still had the terrifying strength to fight against the Son of Heaven and heavily injure him. However, just as the human ancestor turned around, at the same time, two giant petrified palms of different sizes reached out from the sky. Another two heavenly suns took action, two at the same time. Without thinking, Rinzhu turned around and punched out with both fists. Simple and violent. Boom! An incomparably loud explosion could be heard, as well as the muffled groans of the two heavenly suns. Rinzhu returned to the end of the world and fought against the two sons of heaven. The sky had just cleared up. Blood splattered again. The entire sky was dyed blood red. The people on the ground were completely stunned. It was still acceptable for him to fight Prince Xiaoyao alone. Right now, he was fighting with two heavenly suns at the same time, killing them until their blood splattered across the sky. Not only had his battle power not decreased, but it had also skyrocketed. The human ancestor is not dead. A shout came from the crowd. Instantly, countless living beings from the past and present were all excited. The human ancestor is not dead. He is not dead. The human ancestor was their only hope. He was their faith that led them to hope. Countless faith could be seen gathering towards the human ancestor. The human ancestor carried the will of the people and fought against the two heavenly suns. After half a cup of tea's time, the battle finally stopped. The human ancestor returned covered in blood. At this moment, no son of heaven dared to attack again. Thunder rumbled in the sky, flashing around the path of the heavenly law. It was as if he was angry and helpless. He could only watch as Suyu completed the path of the heavenly law in an orderly manner. At this moment, Suyu, he was more than halfway through the path of the heavenly law. In another half an hour, he would succeed. He stepped on the blood of the heavenly suns and walked forward. His feet had long been cut by the thorns on the path, and he was in extreme pain. But he did not stop. This bloody path was paved by the human ancestor. Why did he have to retreat? But Suyu found that there were more and more cracks on the path of the heavenly law in front of him. Even when he stepped on it, he could clearly feel the ground under his feet sinking down. And further ahead, he could not even stand steadily. The path of the heavenly law had been broken once and was already extremely fragile. Whether he could reach the end or not was still unknown. Rumble, finally. When there was only the last part of the road left, The front was already full of debris. If he stepped on it, he would definitely fall. At the very front, the stones had already begun to peel off. Before Suyu could step on it, it would all be broken. If he could not complete the path of the heavenly law, everything he had done before would be in vain. Perhaps he had sensed his predicament. A force from the heavenly court suddenly flew over and attached to the broken path of the heavenly law. That was the faith of the people of the heavenly court. They hoped that their human race's sacred body could complete the path of the heavenly law. The path of faith was also a kind of great path. They were the best things to fuse with. After attaching to the path of the heavenly law, all the broken paths were connected so that they could not be broken in a short period of time. The Nirvana Master watched this scene from afar. He let out a long sigh of relief. The appearance of the human ancestor made the Nirvana Master feel that something was wrong. He had thought that Suyu would definitely achieve the great path today. He did not expect that the Emperor would succeed. What use is that little bit of faith? The Nirvana Master muttered with a cold smile. The path that Suyu's faith was connected to only took up a small piece, less than 1%. Today, his path to the heavens was destined to be cut off. Under such circumstances, it would be better for someone else to break through to the master of the heavenly law. As he was thinking, the human ancestor stared at Suyu's faith and said, "Faith, come." A sound came. The faith from all directions was forcefully twisted by the human ancestor and attached to the path of the heavenly law, no matter who those creatures believed in. At this moment, they were all forcibly used to connect the broken path of the heavenly law. But it was still not enough. Their faith was still too little. At this moment, the human ancestor noticed the Nirvana Master in the distance. His empty eyes were filled with indifference. "You come here." The Nirvana Master trembled. The human ancestor's order made him feel like he was being suppressed. His body trembled uncontrollably. This is the power of the human ancestor. Compared to the human ancestor, his little bit of power and faith was not worth mentioning. He suppressed the trembling in his heart and walked over, not daring to disobey. "Greetings, human ancestor." The human ancestor did not say a word. He clenched his fist. The billions of caves hidden under the Nirvana Master's robe were all taken out. They turned into a sky full of stars. The Nirvana Master was shocked. What is the human ancestor doing? Chapter 2846. What he had today was all thanks to the faith he had gathered over 2 epochs. Normally, it was hidden deeply, definitely not exposed to the outside world, to prevent the outside world's information from affecting his faith. At this moment, Renzu had actually taken them all out. Renzu looked at him indifferently. "Why do you care?" He only said 3 words, but it was incomparably domineering. The Lord of Nirvana's face turned red. Faith was his, so why couldn't he care? The Renzu had gone too far, but he could only endure. There was no need to doubt the Renzu's strength. So what if he was bullied? He lowered his head, not daring to ask any more questions. He could only swallow his anger. But his eyes were fixed on his many cavern worlds. "Go!" The Ren ancestor's voice was like a supreme saint. No living creature dared to disobey. Billions of cavern worlds opened at the same time. The power of faith flew over like fireflies. It fused into the cracked path of the heavenly Tao. From afar, it looked like starlight sprinkling down, incomparably beautiful. The cracks were immediately repaired. Suyu's eyes flickered, and he immediately stepped onto it. Endless power of faith continued to pour in, rapidly repairing the path ahead of them. This allowed Suyu to move forward safely. And the cavern world, which had been drained of the power of faith, immediately became dim. That was because the faith he had accumulated over the years had all been used up. Lord of Nirvana's heart ached when he saw this. The power of faith had been accumulated for at least an entire era. The goal was to prevent the destruction of the era. But now, his many years of hard work had all benefited Suyu, who knew when he would be able to gather so much faith again. What made Nirvana Lord's heart bleed was that the further he went, the more fragmented the path of heaven became. More power of faith was needed. His cavern world dimmed and shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, 20% of the cavern world was drained of the power of faith. Suyu still had a long way to go in his journey of the heavenly law. Suyu felt extremely carefree. He stepped on the solid path of the heavenly law and headed straight for the end. At this moment, he finally felt the heavenly Tao path beneath his feet. Streams of energy rushed out from the ground and into his body. A strong burning sensation surged in his heart. His cultivation, which had been stagnant for a long time, was finally going to break through. Soon, Suyu was delighted. He was finally about to step into the final realm of martial arts that he had been dreaming of for so many years. At this moment, he saw the end of the heavenly Tao. There was an extremely ancient altar there. That was the final moment to become the lord of the heavenly law. As long as he leaped onto the altar, he would receive the last bit of unknown power and transform into a master of the heavenly law. At this moment, Suyu's emotions were surging. However, just as Suyu was about to take the final step, a deafening roar resounded. The altar actually shattered with a bang, transformed into countless pieces of rock, and completely collapsed. Suyu stopped in time. He watched as the altar disappeared from his sight. The last step, gone. The altar had been completely destroyed. Even if they found it, it would be useless. The human ancestors' assistants, the hopes of all living beings, the many experts of both sides, the chief sovereign of death's sacrifice, all of them had been reduced to dust. His path of heavenly Tao would end here. The heaven-defying act still failed in the end. The Lord of Nirvana's gloomy mood was finally relieved. "Serves him right," he said in his heart. Suyu had used more than half of his power of faith, but he still failed in the end. From ancient times until now, no one who opposed the emperor had a good ending. Suyu was no exception. Many peerless experts also sighed. Even the human ancestor couldn't turn the tide. Wanting to produce another existence that surpassed the human ancestor is really an extravagant hope. The many people of the heavenly court were also sad. Their faith did not achieve what they wanted after all. They still failed in the end. Suyu felt even more depressed. Even at this stage, he was still one step short. Was he going to live under the shadow of the emperor for the rest of his life? He was not resigned to this. At this moment, a desolate cry shook the heavens and the earth. "Since the heavenly law has collapsed, I shall be the way." The human ancestor floated into the air. With his broad back, he became the last step of Suyu's path of heavenly law. At the end of the back, a formation drawn with the blood of the human ancestor was clearly visible. The human ancestor's cultivation was enough to conquer the world, to reach the peak. If he was the sky, Taichu was the vast earth. Many of the peerless experts were shocked, speechless. He actually used himself as the heavenly law. Just how terrifying is the human ancestor? Rumble, thunder roared in the depths of the endless heavens. It was as if the inexorable existence was furious that the human ancestor had replaced them. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts crashed down. However, the human ancestor merely raised his head to look, and the tens of thousands of thunderbolts retreated in fear. They only dared to roar in the depths of the heavens. "My clan go," the human ancestor said desolately. Suyu was extremely grateful, and he immediately flew over. He stepped onto the sacrificial altar in a blink of an eye. The sacrificial altar drawn with the blood of the human ancestor had a terrifying power no less than the heavenly law altar. A boundless power that could topple the world was suddenly infused into his body. Within his body, it was as if a mountain torrent had erupted, instantly drowning out the power of the previous path master. Replacing it was a brand new, terrifying power. That was the power of the heavenly law. The only thing Suyu had to do now was to digest the power of the heavenly law and convert it into something useful. The human ancestor turned around, holding it with both hands, and slowly placed it on the ground. His empty eyes swept across the surroundings. He did not say a single word, but the meaning of his eyes clearly conveyed the same message to everyone. Do not bully Suyu. Everyone's hearts trembled. Even someone as strong as the Son of Heaven had been seriously injured. What more them? They could be annihilated in the blink of an eye. The master of Nirvana did not even dare to breathe loudly. He kept his head lowered, afraid that the human ancestor would find out what he had done and harm him. Fortunately, the human ancestor only swept his gaze over them indifferently before looking away. Then he slowly walked into the abyss. The moment he entered the water, a large patch of dark red suddenly appeared in the water, spreading around the human ancestor. Everyone's hearts trembled. The master of Nirvana squinted his eyes, his gaze unreadable. The human ancestor was injured. It was not the blood of the Son of Heaven, nor was it the blood he used to draw the sacrificial altar. He was seriously injured. Battling the Son of Heaven was not without a price. But he did not know how serious his injuries were. The master of Nirvana returned to his cave abode. What made his heart ache was that half of the cavern world had dimmed. His life's accumulation had been greatly damaged. He stared coldly at Suyu. His heart was filled with hatred. He did not dare to do anything to the human ancestor, but Suyu, it would be fine if the human ancestor was not seriously injured. Since he was seriously injured, what was there to be afraid of? Anyway, he was about to enter the 9-star civilization. Could the human ancestor chase him there? Of course, now was not the time to strike. He left with his hands behind his back, his face dark. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 28:47. Suyu's path to the heavenly law was too difficult. It was a heaven-defying act. It was not easy to succeed. No one could take advantage of the situation and ruin Suyu's final process. However, the Nirvana Master's billions of cavern worlds were in turmoil because of the loss of a large amount of faith power. They would not be able to trouble Suyu in a short period of time. I wonder what level he will reach after breaking through to the Master of the Heavenly Law. A peerless expert said with great anticipation. Suyu's path to the Heavenly Law was so long that it left everyone speechless. It was unparalleled. No one could compare. Even the Rinzhu was not as good as him. Once he broke through, it was hard to say what level he would reach. Yin Yazi was also excited. He stroked his beard and said, when the Rinzhu broke through to the Master of the Heavenly Law, he reached the peak of the early stage. After 10,000 years of training, he reached the middle stage of the Master of the Heavenly Law. So you could reach the second level of the early stage of the Master of the Heavenly Law. Under normal circumstances, Suyu's path to the Heavenly Law would be long enough to surpass the Rinzhu. However, Suyu's path to the Heavenly Law had been destroyed by the Emperor once. Moreover, the altar had been broken. The Rinzhu had turned his spine into an altar. The effect of the breakthrough would be greatly reduced. It was already an optimistic and conservative estimate that he could reach a level slightly inferior to the Rinzhu. What a pity! He could have surpassed the Rinzhu. The heaven-splitting ancestor let out a long sigh. The Rinzhu alone was enough to intimidate the holy mountain. If he surpassed him, the absolute beginning creatures might have a chance to overthrow the holy mountain. Yin Yazi said, it's not easy. The holy mountain does not allow another Rinzhu to appear now. He looked at Suyu and could not help but sigh. Suyu's achievement is already a miracle among miracles. He knew Suyu's life experience is the best. How many times had he narrowly escaped death? How many times had he been threatened by the holy mountain? Apart from anything else, the last time he broke through to the level of the Master of the Path, the flame of the way almost burned him to ashes. He gave up everything he had in his life to barely succeed. Now, the path to the heavenly law was even harder than reaching the sky. Fortunately, when he broke through, the Rinzhu was nearby, the peerless experts of the absolute beginning, as well as the Nirvana Master who had accumulated the power of faith for 2 eras. All these factors contributed to Suyu's success on the path to the heavenly law. Otherwise, if one was missing, it would be a failure. One could imagine the miracles within. Let's wait and see. Yin Yazi sat with his legs crossed, waiting for Suyu's transformation. At that time, the Lord of Nirvana returned to the warship. Staring at the gloomy cavern world, Nirvana Lord's face was extremely gloomy. This time, he had really suffered a huge setback. The most troublesome thing was not the massive loss of faith power. Instead, In the cavern world where the human ancestor had extracted the power of faith, the creatures inside had greatly shaken their faith in him. This was because the Run ancestor's strength far surpassed that of the Nirvana Lord. Moreover, the Ren ancestor was the hope of all living beings. Because of that, many people no longer viewed the Lord of Nirvana as a unique faith. They were even considering worshipping the human ancestor, Nirvana Protector. The remaining 16 protectors immediately appeared around him and said respectfully, "Please instruct us, Lord of Nirvana." Stabilize the believers immediately. This was an urgent matter. Everything else could be dealt with later. Yes, the 16 protectors immediately went to make arrangements. There were trillions of caves, so of course they couldn't go to them one by one. Among them, the chief protector was the one with the highest cultivation. Upon returning to the cavern world, he immediately said, "The apostles are here." Each of the protectors had tens of thousands of apostles under their command. Their task was to manage the believers in the cavern world. According to their levels, the believers were divided into 4 types: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. There were only 2 heaven believers of the highest level, and they had great authority. Usually, the protectors would not ask about the specific affairs of the believers, and it was all up to the 2 heaven believers to take care of many things. "Greetings, Chief Protector." The Chief Protector looked at the 2 heaven believers. "Deity of 6 paths, demon barefooted, the 2 of you will preside over the stability of the believers in the cavern world in this region. This is an urgent matter, and there must be no mistakes." A man and a woman walked out of it. Their cultivation was at the peak of the early stage of the heavenly lawmaster. The man was covered with black scales and sharp barbs. He gave people an awe-inspiring feeling. The woman had delicate features, and her expression was tranquil, without sadness or joy. "Yes, Chief Protector," the 2 said in unison. The demon barefooted turned around and said to the tens of thousands of apostles, "Immediately go to the responsible area and secretly execute the believers who led the believers to waver." Yes, the 5,000 apostles under his jurisdiction all said yes. "What if there's a riot?" one of the apostles asked. The demon barefooted's crimson eyes closed indifferently. "Then kill them all. Traitorous believers are more hateful than enemies." Yes, the 5,000 apostles all received the order. The demon barefooted said indifferently, "Then what are you still standing there for? Do it immediately." He then looked at Deity of 6 paths. "I advise you to be like me and cut the Gordian knot. Continuing to appease them will only produce the opposite effect." Hearing that, the believers all had complicated expressions on their faces. The 2 angel disciples had been fighting openly and secretly for many years, trying to gain the attention of the Chief Protector. Their relationship couldn't be said to be harmonious. They were even hostile. Everything had to be fought for. However, Deity of 6 paths was indeed skilled in handling believers, not something the demon barefooted could compare to. The Chief Protector often praised Deity of 6 paths. The demon barefooted was already dissatisfied with this comparison. This time, the Lord of Nirvana was in great danger, so it was the best time for the 2 of them to display their talents. Deity of 6 paths spoke calmly. "I don't need you to tell me how to do things," she continued. "Go to the grotto world where the faith is shaken at all costs. Make the leaders believe in the Lord of Nirvana again. The ones who shout the loudest, if they believe again, will be the best advertisement." Hearing that, the 5,000 apostles under her immediately received the order and left. No one doubted it. It could be seen how much they trusted Deity of 6 paths. The Chief Protector nodded, expressing her approval of Deity of 6 paths. Using violence to conquer faith can only last for a short period of time. Only by being sincerely convinced can it last for a long time. The demon barefooted was unwilling and said, "Don't worry, Chief Protector, this subordinate will use the fastest speed to quell the unrest of faith." The Chief Protector nodded with a solemn expression. "Him. This time, the Lord of Nirvana has suffered heavy losses. If you can do something, you might receive unimaginable benefits." The demon barefooted was excited. The reward from the Lord of Nirvana must be an unimaginable opportunity. But deity of six paths' eyes flickered. Who caused such heavy losses to the Lord of Nirvana? The chief protector looked at deity of six paths. After a moment of silence, she said, "It's not a big secret. The creatures of the inner abyss already know. It's Suyu." Hearing that, the demon barefooted was unfamiliar. But deity of six paths' pupils dilated. Suyu? Chapter 2848. If Suyu were here, he would definitely recognize her. Do you know Suyu? The great guardian looked at the six-path fairy with a frown. The six-path fairy immediately hid his surprise and said, "Why wouldn't I know him? Suyu's name has been known in the void for a long time. After all, he has the human sacred body." Indeed, only then did the great guardian get rid of his doubts. That made sense. Suyu had been famous for a long time, especially after he revealed the human tribe's sacred body. Who didn't know that he was sleeping in the void? Yes, it is this Suyu who destroyed the faith of the Nirvana Master. "You must stabilize the believers," the great guardian said. The barefooted demon nodded and said fiercely, "Why don't you let me kill Suyu? That way, he would be more valued by the ancestor." "You," the great guardian snorted. "The 17th and 18th guardians have already been killed by him." The barefooted demon's pupils constricted. Although the 17th and 18th guardians were the weakest among the great guardians, they were still middle-stage masters of the heaven law. How could they be killed by Suyu? "Now, do you still want to go?" the great guardian asked. The barefooted demon said hurriedly, "When I am strong enough, I will take his head." "Ha! If you can't do it now, don't even think about it in the future." The great guardian looked fearful. He is about to break through to the level of the heaven law master. More than that, the path he is taking is the same as the Nirvana Master, the path of faith. In the future, as he becomes stronger and stronger, he will gather more faith, and his strength will increase infinitely. How can you compare with him? The barefooted demon took a deep breath. He dares to walk the same path of faith as the Nirvana Master? He is courting death. The great guardian agreed. Yes, the Nirvana Master will not forgive him. He won't live for long. The six-path fairy looked calm. However, the look in his eyes was constantly changing and flickering. "All right, go and arrange the details." The great guardian waved his hand, and the two of them went their separate ways. The barefooted demon summoned his 5,000 apostles and came to the sky above the cavern world under his jurisdiction. He arranged for the apostles to enter the cavern world one by one to suppress the disobedient believers. After the arrangements were made, the apostles entered the corresponding cavern world one after another. Only a single apostle wearing a conical bamboo hat stood in place, not moving forward. "Why aren't you leaving?" Scarlet Foot Demon coldly rebuked. The latter said in a low voice, "I have something to tell you." "Speak." The bamboo hat apostle said, "Sir, what you should be most concerned about isn't pacifying the traitorous believers, but the samsara immortal. Perhaps this is your only chance to send the six Tao immortal into an abyss of eternal damnation." Barefoot Demon narrowed his eyes. "Why do you say so?" The bamboo-hatted disciple said, "Sir, you might not know this, but the six-path deity and Suyu are good friends." Hearing this, the red-foot demon's pupils constricted as a terrifying light burst out from his eyes. He took a step forward, grabbed the collar of the bamboo-hat apostle, and then shouted, "Is this absolutely true?" The bamboo-hat apostle said, "I guarantee it with my life because I know all of them." The barefooted demon let go of the conical hat apostle and said, "Take off your conical hat." The latter immediately took off his bamboo hat and revealed his true appearance. It wasn't anyone else. It was Gu Taishu. Gu Taishu, who was saved by the 18 guardians when they passed by. After being brought back to the Nirvana worship, he was supposed to be a believer, a tool to provide faith. However, the chief guardian felt that Gu Taishu's talent was rare, so he took him in as one of his tens of thousands of apostles. "It's you?" The Redfoot demon vaguely remembered. This person was rescued by the 18 guardians when he was being hunted. "Tell me, what exactly happened?" Gu Taishu immediately told him everything he knew. He heard that both of them came from a small cavern world, the Star River God Realm. He couldn't help but believe most of it. Coupled with the strange reaction of the six-path deity just now, he was convinced. Sir, if I'm not wrong, the six-path deity might steal the faith of the Nirvana Master and hand it over to Suyu, Gu Taishu said, squinting his eyes. The red-foot demon shook his head and said resolutely, "That's impossible. No matter how bold the six-path deity is, he wouldn't dare to make an enemy of the Nirvana Master." However, Gu Taishu was very sure. Based on my understanding of Suyu, he has an unparalleled ability, which is to deceive women into sacrificing everything for him. Some women are even willing to sacrifice their lives for him, let alone some faith energy. Sir, you can send someone to keep an eye on him. The six-path deity will take action soon. The red-foot demon was tempted. If he really caught the six-path deity, he wouldn't be able to compete with him in the future. Whether he could survive or not was another matter altogether. After all, the chief guardian had unlimited expectations for the six-path deity. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. If that day came, the six-path deity would probably be killed by the disappointed and angry chief guardian. Sir, you can keep an eye on him. Even if you don't get what you want, you won't lose anything. The red-foot demon looked at Gu Taishu, patted his shoulder, and said, "If this matter really succeeds, I will make you an Earth Apostle." From a yellow-level apostle to an Earth Apostle, Gu Taishu had reached the sky in a single step. "Thank you for your appreciation, sir." The red-foot demon was very excited. He gave some simple instructions and immediately went to arrange people to keep an eye on him. Gu Taishu watched him leave and put on his bamboo hat again. He patted the shoulder that the red-foot demon had patted and said indifferently, "Earth Apostle, what are you thinking? Do you think I, Gu Taishu, am someone who will always be under someone's command?" The six-path deity was completely unaware of this. In a dim cavern world, she was keeping an eye on a group of yellow-level apostles and rebuilding the statue of faith. Because a large part of the power of faith was missing, the statue had collapsed, and now it needed to be rebuilt. The statue's appearance was naturally that of the merciful Nirvana Master. The six-path deity sat on a rock in the ruins, her hands supporting her chin, and she was deep in thought. Suyu's appearance was too sudden. It disrupted her thoughts. She used to think that she would be muddle-headed by the Nirvana Master for the rest of her life. She would live a peaceful life. But Suyu's appearance was like a stone falling into a lake, causing her heart to ripple. "Sir, the construction materials for the statue have been prepared. Please give the order to rebuild it." An Earth Apostle walked over and said cautiously. The six-path deity came back to her senses and nodded. "Okay, let's start. Gather the faith as soon as possible." She was suddenly stunned. After thinking for a while, she said, "Wait." The Earth Apostle looked at her in surprise and silently obeyed. After a while, the six-path deity raised her head and drew a brand new image of the statue on the spot. "Don't rebuild the old statue. Just build this new statue on the original site." The Earth Apostle took the image and couldn't help but be stunned. This isn't the Nirvana Master, right? The image was of an extremely young and handsome, silver-haired youth. It wasn't the Nirvana Master. Chapter 2849. The six-path immortal stared at him and said, "Don't you and I know what faith is?" Ordinary believers might not understand it. However, as the people who managed the believers, they knew better than anyone else. In a sense, the Lord of Nirvana's faith was all a lie. Make use of their ignorance, cheat their trust, and finally, trust becomes faith. Just like the moon-worshipping cult in the Dark Civilization. The Earth Apostle hesitated. It's not difficult for us to make our believers change their faith, but if the Lord of Nirvana finds out, he will definitely grind our bones to dust. Faith was the foundation of the Lord of Nirvana. Touching his faith was tantamount to fighting with a tiger for food. The six-path deity calmly said, "What are you afraid of? The barefoot demon and I have always been in charge of the specific matters. The Lord of Nirvana has never asked about it." The Earth Apostle remained hesitant. His heart was filled with resistance. He didn't want to betray the Lord of Nirvana for no reason. Do you know who the young man you saw was? The six-path immortal stood up and looked at the portrait. The Earth Apostle shook his head. Never seen it before. Suyu. It's him. The Earth Apostle was extremely shocked. Wasn't he the sworn enemy of the Lord of Nirvana? Then all the more reason why we cannot change the statue, the Earth Apostle said. The six-path fairy said calmly, Suyu has the holy body of the human clan and is respected by all. If you believe in him, you will be protected by him without holding back. But what can you get by believing in the Lord of Nirvana? The Earth Apostle was silent. There was nothing to gain. On the contrary, he could be abandoned by the Lord of Nirvana at any time. The Lord of Nirvana had always treated the common people, as well as the master and disciples, as tools. Use it as needed. When there is no need, it is entirely possible to kick it away. If he really encountered a danger that even the Nirvana lords couldn't handle, he would have to abandon them. Now, Suyu has the support of the human ancestor and the Void Era's peerless experts, so he won't lose to the Nirvana master in any aspect. In fact, he might even surpass him, the Six Paths Fairy said. Why don't we give them a gift of surrender? The Earth Apostle was finally moved. They had already inquired about what had happened earlier. He had learned a lot about Suyu. Now, Suyu had the upper hand, especially since he was under the protection of the Ren ancestor. Compared to the human ancestor, what was the Lord of Nirvana? They were just ants. Suyu had such a powerful backer, so he did not fear the Nirvana master at all. Seeing that the Earth Apostle was finally moved, the Six-Path Fairy said, Moreover, you may not know this, but the Tao Abyss's invitation letter has fallen into Suyu's hands. What? This news was like a bolt from the blue. The Tao Abyss invitation was the only invitation that allowed one to cross the abyss and head to the 9-star civilizations. If they lost it, how would the Lord of Nirvana bring them into the 9-star civilization? Avoid the destruction of the era forever? That's why I'm doing this, for your own good. Immortal Six Paths said. The Earth Apostle made up his mind. Immortal of the Six Paths, please guide me. The Immortal of the Six Paths nodded. Yes, secretly dispatch trusted subordinates to replace the statues in the cavern world under their control. At the same time, persuade people to change their faith. The Earth Apostle said, Don't worry, sir. Since Su Sage is the one who holds the invitation, it will be easy to convince them. As for persuading the common people to change their faith, it's just as easy. After all, he has the sacred physique of the human clan and is respected by all. Six Daos Immortal nodded and looked around vigilantly. Then he went to the second Earth Apostle and continued to persuade him. Things were proceeding in an orderly manner. On the other side, Suyu had finally reached the edge of a breakthrough. There was a flickering airflow around him that was changing rapidly. It was because the power in his body was settling into the power of the master of the heavenly law. He's about to break through. Yun Yazi, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes. The other powerful ones looked over. When breaking through to the master of the heavenly law, the current of the heavenly law will appear around the body. The strength of the current can determine the level of one's cultivation. Right at that moment, the current suddenly erupted, reaching a height of 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet of current? Some of the powerful ones looked disappointed. 1,000 feet was the first stage of the early stage of the master of the heavenly law. The long-awaited breakthrough turned out to be only the first stage of the early stage. It was really disappointing. They had worked together to help him at all costs. They had also wasted the battle between the human ancestor and the emperor. He had even used his backbone as the last piece of the great path. We had high expectations. His path of the heavenly law was broken before. It's already not easy for him to break through to the master of the heavenly law. The heaven-splitting ancestor comforted the crowd. However, he was also disappointed. They had paid a huge price to get an ordinary master of the heavenly law. How could they not be disappointed? Even Yun Yazi sighed silently. His level was lower than they had expected. Suyu's future potential was limited after all. It was impossible for him to reach the level of the human ancestor. However, right at that moment, Suyu suddenly looked up. He exhaled a breath toward the highest heavens. The breath rose against the sky, sweeping the current of the heavenly law up to a height of 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet. 3,000 feet. The disappointed, peerless, mighty figures were all shocked. 1,000 feet meant the second stage of the early stage of the master of the heavenly law. That's great. The powerful ones were all overjoyed. He still has a second breath. His path of the heavenly law is indeed different from that of ordinary people. When an ordinary master of the heavenly law broke through, there would only be a current of current. The height of the current would indicate what level of cultivation he had broken through to. At that moment, Su Yu's second breath was really unexpected. Haha, the help of the human ancestor and us was not in vain. It's quite extraordinary indeed. With such potential, it's certain that he will reach our level in the future. As for whether he can surpass us, it depends on his luck. Yin Yazi was overjoyed, but he was also full of contempt. That was not what they had said just now. Were they changing their words now? They were really fickle. However, Su Yu's ability to reach such a level was expected. He stepped forward with a smile and was about to pat Su Yu's shoulder to wake him up from his breakthrough. Unexpectedly, Su Yu actually exhaled again. This breath was filled with even more majestic power. With just a gentle exhalation, Yin Yazi was forced back. The current shot up into the sky. It pushed the 10,000-foot heavenly law's energy to a higher level. 100,000 feet. It's 100,000 feet. At that moment, everyone was in an uproar. That meant that Su Yu had broken through to the peak of the early stage of the master of the heavenly law. He had reached the level of the human ancestor. Unbelievable. Someone can actually reach the peak again. The human ancestor, the second human ancestor, has been born. The human race is really an incredible race, creating unprecedented records time and time again. No wonder the human ancestor personally intervened, using his own back as a path and his blood as an altar to help Su Yu take the final step. Yin Yazi was also shocked. He had expected that Su Yu reaching the second stage of the early stage would be the best outcome. Unexpectedly. Chapter 2850. It was unexpected. There is hope for the world. When Su Yu grows up, he will be a sharp knife in the heart of the holy mountain. Ha! The people of the void are not fated to die. The previous human ancestor fell, and the next human ancestor is born. Just as they were rejoicing, suddenly, Su Yu exhaled once again. The airflow flew tens of thousands of feet into the sky, pushing the heavenly energy up again. What? There's a third breath? This is unprecedented. What level is he going to reach? Many peerless mighty figures were shocked. Yin Yazi was trembling with excitement. The potential to surpass the human ancestor. They thought that the broken heavenly energy would have a negative impact on Su Yu. In the end, the impact was not obvious. His breakthrough still displayed the oppressive effect of the peerless heavenly path. Everyone stared at the final breath, pushing the heavenly Tao aura upwards. 10,000 feet. 10,000 feet. 13,000 feet. Finally, when it reached 15,000 feet, the airflow finally dissipated. Su Yu lowered his head again and opened his eyes. His breakthrough had come to an end. The peak of the early stage of the heavenly law master. He looked at the 15,000 feet of airflow with regret. If he broke through to the middle stage of the heavenly law master, the airflow would reach 20,000 feet. Unfortunately, the broken heavenly energy had a great impact on him. It could only reach 10,000 feet. Now, he should be a little stronger than the peak of the early stage of the heavenly law master. If there was an opportunity, he could break through to the middle stage. He stood up. He bowed in the direction of the abyss, to the many powerful beings present, and to the creatures of the heavenly court. Today I, Su Yu, have achieved the heavenly law, and all of you have contributed greatly. I will remember today's kindness and try my best to repay it. His voice was loud and clear, shaking the entire inner abyss. It was announcing an earth-shattering event. The end of the era. Su Yu, who had the sacred body of the human clan, achieved the heavenly law and achieved a breakthrough in cultivation. It seemed to be responding to his words. Several golden beams shot out from the void. They bombarded the defensive formation of the inner abyss. That indicated the unwillingness and anger of the holy mountain. Rumble. The 500 holy mountains, which had been silent for a long time, floated again and arrived above the inner abyss. However, they did not attack again. Instead, it continued to linger in the inner abyss, constantly floating. Suyu's eyes were cold. The holy mountain has been bullying me for too long. He clenched his left fist. The 8 domains converge at the center of his palm, forming a giant 8-colored bow. With a wave of his right hand, an arrow condensed from his domain appeared in his palm. Whoosh! He drew his bow and shot an arrow. The arrow turned into an 8-colored stream of light and instantly flew out. The same domain, when used by people with different cultivations, would naturally have different power. Now, Suyu was at the peak of the early stage of the Heavenly Lawmaster. They were second only to the 8 hegemons of the past. On top of that, the 8 domains had merged into one. One could well imagine how powerful it was. The 8-colored light instantly shot out, penetrated the defensive formation, and headed straight for the 500 sacred mountains. The 500 sacred mountains naturally sensed it. He casually shot out a golden beam of light in an attempt to neutralize the incoming arrow. But the arrow was unimaginably stubborn. Not only did it not destroy the arrow, but it was also split apart by the arrow. Only then did the 500 sacred mountains treat him seriously. 10 beams of golden light shot out together. However, it was still split apart by the arrow. Sacred Mountain turned pale with fright. Only then did they gather all their strength to destroy the arrow. However, they had already missed 2 opportunities. It was too late to gather their strength again at this moment. Boom! The arrow shot into the Sacred Mountains. The Sacred Mountains, which faced the arrow head-on, were immediately penetrated and shattered into powder. The hundreds of sacred mountains in the vicinity were attacked by the airflow. They were either shattered or had severe cracks. With just one blow, more than 100 sacred mountains were damaged. However, this was not the end. The arrow's momentum did not diminish. It forcibly passed through the union of the 500 sacred mountains. The unparalleled power forcibly blasted the fused sacred mountains apart. With just one blow, it shocked the world. The peerless Almighties could not help but shudder with fear. If they were hit by this blow, they would undoubtedly die. And this was just a casual blow from Suyu. If he went all out, who could resist it? Among them, only Yunyazi, the Demon Emperor, and the Heaven-Splitting Elder would not be afraid. This arrow, it had completely established the reputation of the human clan's sacred body. Only such strength was worthy of being called the human clan's sacred body. Look at the sacred mountains, someone exclaimed. They were shocked to find that. The sacred mountains that had been hit, although scattered, were each connected by a thunderbolt. It allowed them to quickly fuse again. Although the thunderbolt disappeared in a flash, many of the Almighties recognized it. Their faces instantly darkened. Thunder of annihilation. The Demon Emperor, the Heaven-Splitting Elder, and the other existences from the previous era all looked grave. No wonder the sacred mountains have been quiet for so long. The sacred mountains have been silent for more than a month, not moving at all. It turned out that they had not stopped attacking, but were preparing something more powerful. If not for the sacred body, Su blasting the fused sacred mountains apart today, I'm afraid we would still be in the dark, the Demon Emperor said coldly. Suyu frowned slightly. He was just testing out his strength after the breakthrough. He did not expect to make an unexpected discovery. What is the thunder of annihilation? Suyu asked. The Heaven-Splitting Elder's face was filled with dread, even a hint of fear. It is something specially prepared for us Almighties of the Dream Crossing Realm. It is infinitely powerful and extremely lethal. In terms of power, the Golden Beam is not even a tenth of it. In the previous era, the Tao Abyss was destroyed by 10 Thunder of Annihilation, and 99% of the peerless Almighties were killed. 10. Although it was just a quick glance, there were more than 10 Thunder of Annihilation. More than 100. Looking at the situation just now, the thunder of annihilation has not been completely condensed. It will take another half a month to completely form. The Demon Emperor and the others had the absolute right to speak on this matter. Half a month? However, most of the creatures had not received the aura of chaos and could not be transferred to the 9-star civilization. They would need at least a year. It's too late. We have to start preparing to cross the abyss and go to the 9-star civilization now, Yun Yazi said. Although most of the creatures would be sacrificed, but there was nothing they could do. At Qing Yun's current speed, it was impossible to provide all the creatures with the aura of chaos. They could only take those who were already there. The appearance of the thunder of annihilation had completely disrupted the plans of the inner abyss. They had no choice but to give up the rest to the creatures. Suyu hesitated. The creatures on his Heavenly Court's battleship had not had time to instill the aura of chaos. If he abandoned them, how could he continue to call himself the sacred body of the human clan? After all, he represented the will of the people. Is there no other way? Suyu said to himself. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat for no reason. His heart stirred, and he said, "I'll excuse myself for a moment." He came to the front of Qing Yun's cage again. Qing Yun was sitting cross-legged, continuously releasing the aura of chaos in her body and instilling it into the creatures that had been arranged nearby. He listened for any movement. Chapter 2851. I want to ask you something. So he was slightly hesitant, as if he hadn't made up his mind yet. Qing Yun stopped and nodded. Sure, but please be quick. We don't have much time. The next wave of attacks from the Sacred Mountain would always come very quickly. The formation of the inner abyss might not be able to last for a year. Little did she know that she would not be able to hold on for even half a month, not to mention a year. The chaotic energy in your body, was it extracted from the body of the stone birth heavenly son? Suyu asked. Qing Yun nodded in agreement. Yes. Don't tell me you want to. Suyu touched his heart, and he could clearly feel that it was beating faster. It was as if it had sensed Suyu's thoughts and was resisting him. Yes. I wonder if the heart of the stone-birth son of heaven can also produce chaotic energy. Suyu was a little hesitant. He was very worried that if he took out the heart blood again, he would fall into that strange and depressing dream again. If he were to face that female stone-birth son of heaven again, he wasn't sure if he could come back alive. The heart is the essence of the stone-birth son of heaven's body. The chaotic aura it contains is more than 10,000 times more than mine. Qing Yun gave a very certain reply. However, she warned, just as I said, don't meet with Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower again. Otherwise, it will speed up your assimilation. Suyu's current body condition was different from their vessels. As long as the stone inside the vessel was removed, it could still live. However, Suyu had a heart in his body. If Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince wanted to be resurrected, he had to use Suyu as the foundation. If Suyu absorbed the blood from the heart, it would speed up the petrification process. I advise you not to take the risk, Qing Yun reminded. Suyu stood on the spot, deep in thought. After a long time, he made up his mind and said, "Time is of the essence. I can't wait any longer." His sacred body of a human clan was given to him by the world. How could he abandon the common people? Even if it was a risk, he had to give him a chance to escape from the abyss of suffering. He immediately sent a message to the Heavenly Court's battleship, as well as to Yun Yazi and the others, informing them to lead the remaining living beings in the inner abyss over. The chaotic energy in his heart blood was extremely dense. Perhaps it wouldn't take long before he could give them all the primal chaos chi. At that time, Yun Yazi and the others received the news and immediately led common people over. Knowing that Suyu was going to take the risk to extract the blood of the petrified heart, they were all worried. As Suyu's teacher, Yun Yazi could not dissuade him in public. However, the Demon Emperor and the heaven-shattering Patriarch tried their best to stop them. The Demon Emperor said, "Human brat, your future potential is limitless and you have the hope of surpassing the human ancestor. If you take the risk today and suffer any injuries, it would be a great loss to the nihility." Patriarch Heaven Splitter also said, "Indeed, you shouldn't be sacrificed. Many peerless mighty figures tried to dissuade him. If it were someone else, it would be worth it to sacrifice a little. However, Suyu's current status was too special. Since ancient times, he was the only one who could surpass the human ancestor and help them fight against the sacred mountain son of heaven. If there were any mishaps, the losses would be too great. Suyu was calm and composed. Looking around at the countless creatures, he said, I have the sacred physique of the human clan, and I must set an example for the human clan. You don't have to persuade me anymore. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. Moreover, his ability originated from the common people. Today, the world was in danger. So how could he retreat? Suyu slowly closed his eyes and began to extract the blood from the heart. I will take at most one day to extract the blood from the heart. Please arrange everything properly. Seeing that Suyu had made up his mind, they could not stop him. They could only arrange the manpower with heavy hearts. As the demon emperor made the arrangements, he said to Yunyazi, Sai, this disciple of yours is too irrational, but he is really admirable. If it were me, would I care about the life and death of the common people? Even though he did not agree with Suyu, he was still moved by Suyu's decision. The word sacrifice was easy to say, but it was very difficult to do it. Those who could do it selflessly were worthy of heartfelt admiration. Yin Yazi was speechless. How could he not know Suyu's character? After a long time, he said slowly, Isn't it because of this that he can be respected by the common people and gather a group of compassionate and righteous people around him? The demon emperor thought about it and agreed. If Suyu was selfish and only cared about himself, why should the common people respect him? Why should he become the sacred physique of the human clan and represent the will of the common people? How could there be a young girl like Xiaoya who silently sacrificed herself for him? I hope the common people will not let him down. The demon emperor said, Countless common people, under the arrangements of the peerless mighty figures, they headed to this place in an orderly manner. 3 great seniors. How should we deal with the imprisoned loser from the central abyss? Should we bring him over as well? A peerless supreme being asked. Previously, many tribes in the middle abyss had been completely annihilated because of the enemy's incitement. This greatly injured Dao Yuan's vitality. This matter naturally caused the inner abyss to be extremely furious. Therefore, from the ascended dragons commanded by the middle abyss to the remaining generals, everyone was punished. Both of them were locked up in the prison to receive severe punishment. Right now, all the living beings had obtained the primal chaos chi, but they were still imprisoned where they were. Heaven-splitting Patriarch thought for a moment and said, They don't deserve to die. They are qualified to be watered by the chaotic aura. The demon emperor frowned. It's too early to say that they don't deserve to die. The matter of the middle abyss has yet to be investigated. They only had enough time to detain all of them. Because they were facing the holy mountain, they had no time to investigate the specific reasons for the middle abyss's fiasco. It was still difficult to determine whether they were guilty or not. The Patriarch of Heaven splitting grinned and said, What's so hard to say? How can the commander guard against a traitor? No matter what, let them receive the chaotic aura first. I hope that they can be reformed and atone for their crimes in the future. The demon emperor frowned, but he didn't argue any further. There was truly no need to clash with the heaven-splitting Patriarch over a few people. In particular, many of the imprisoned people were ancient God Nine Dragon subordinates. For example, the Ascended Dragon. After a while, they would have to cross the abyss. An ancient God Nine Dragon was in the abyss. Thus, they had to weigh the pros and cons. Okay, let them come, the demon emperor said. Not long after, a group of chained generals from the Middle Abyss commander's tent were brought over. All of them had haggard and ashamed expressions. The only one who could hold his head high and his expression unchanging was probably the Ascended Dragon. His cultivation was no weaker than any of the supreme experts present. Moreover, he had an esteemed status as a descendant of ancient God Nine Dragon. What he was most confident about was that the destruction of the Middle Abyss had nothing to do with him. Why did he have to be imprisoned? If he had to blame someone, he should blame the Holy Mountain. The heaven-splitting Patriarch walked up to them and said with his hands clasped behind his back, You are all guilty, but in consideration of your contributions, I will not pursue this matter. I will even give you a chance to inject chaotic aura." Hearing this, chapter 2852. To be honest, they thought they were dead for sure. Even if he didn't die under severe punishment, he would die at the hands of the sacred mountain. Unexpectedly, not only did the inner abyss not pursue their mistakes, it even gave them a chance to obtain the chaos chi. Who wouldn't be moved and extremely grateful? The one who was most touched was the golden dragon. He bowed to the Heaven Splitter Patriarch and said, "Thank you, Heaven Splitter Patriarch. I will repay your kindness with my life." However, Heaven Splitting Patriarch stepped aside and chuckled. "I'm not that capable. You should be thanking him for giving you the chaotic chi." After he stepped aside, the golden dragon immediately saw Su Yu, who was sitting cross-legged in front of them. She sensed it was him. The golden dragon was taken aback. The sacred body of the human clan? Su Yu? The patriarch of Heaven Splitter nodded and sighed at the people in front of him. "We're all trying to dissuade Sacred Physique, Su, from taking the risk to give you the chaotic aura. He's the one who insisted. I hope that you can understand his intentions as a leader of the world." The golden dragon shuddered. His heart was filled with uncontrollable admiration. These sinners had indirectly destroyed the Middle Abyss and caused Su Yu's tribe to perish. However, not only did he not complain, he even treated them equally. It was hard for him not to admire such behavior. Imperceptibly, a faith was emitted from his body and integrated into Su Yu's body. He was not the only one with this idea. Countless beliefs were generated out of thin air, and they gathered toward Su Yu continuously. Of course, not everyone thought so. When the dragon noticed that it was Su Yu, it immediately looked down on him. "Him? You must be joking. Chaos Chi is so hard to come by. How can he help so many of us obtain it?" Hearing this, the golden dragon was extremely displeased. "Shanglong, watch your attitude. Su Yu forgave us and gave you the chaotic energy. You should be grateful," the golden dragon said in a deep voice. His cultivation was not as high as Shanglong's, but he dared to say and do. "What are you grateful for? It's not like he only gave it to me. He gave it to everyone." Shanglong said, "I was just given it in passing. There's nothing to thank me for. A favor given to one person is a favor, but a favor given to everyone is a matter of course." The golden dragon said angrily, "Then don't ask for it." Shanglong said disapprovingly, "So you gave it to everyone, so it would be a waste if we don't accept it. So why shouldn't I?" This bandit logic made the golden dragon so angry that he laughed. The intense argument between the two naturally attracted the attention of the surrounding people. They were very dissatisfied with Shanglong's words. "You are a sinner. How can you be so confident? You are speaking as if Su Yu should have given you the chaotic energy. He owes you?" The ascendant dragon looked around coldly with a sharp glint in his eyes. No matter what, he was still a peerless expert. How could a group of ordinary people make irresponsible remarks? "All of you, shut up." The pliosaur unleashed its domain power, suppressing everyone and making it difficult for them to breathe. They couldn't even speak. Such rude and unreasonable behavior attracted even more people's attention. Su Yu was one of them. The fluctuation of the domain caused him to wake up from his meditative state. He frowned slightly and asked, "Why is it so noisy?" He needed to calm down and prepare to extract the blood from his heart. Why couldn't these people even maintain basic silence? He looked in the direction of the domain. Su Yu could easily see the source of the realm, and he couldn't help but furrow his brows. Why isn't he dead yet? Unbelievable. Shanglong, the chief culprit of the entire Middle Abyss, not only was he not punished, but he was brought to him to accept the chaotic energy? Huh. Everyone was puzzled. The demon emperor stepped forward and asked, "What happened?" Su Yu pointed at Shanglong and said, "Is the inner abyss indifferent to the destruction of the Middle Abyss? So many people died tragically, and the inner abyss didn't give any explanation?" The demon emperor understood tacitly and said, "Because of the attack on the holy mountain, we have no time to judge the destruction of the Middle Abyss." "Why? Is there a reason we don't know?" Su Yu nodded deeply, and his eyes were cold. then you have really neglected your duty to let such a great evil person live until now." As soon as he finished speaking, the demon emperor immediately sensed the seriousness of the situation and looked at Shanglong coldly. "Is there anything you need to tell us truthfully?" Shanglong's face was indifferent. "Just as I've said, the enemy has infiltrated all the tribes, big and small. It's not my fault, but if you want to pin a crime on me, you can always find a way to frame me. If you insist on punishing me, I have nothing to say." Listening to his tone, it was as if he was being persecuted. Hearing his shameless boasting, the golden dragon scolded angrily. "Shameless!" He cupped his fists and said to the demon emperor, "Lord Demon Emperor, this is what happened that day." Holy soon noticed that there was a traitor from the Holy Mountain in his own tribe, so he speculated that the other tribes were likely to have traitors too. He hoped that Shanglong would immediately order a thorough investigation of the borders of each tribe. However, Shanglong was obstinate and self-opinionated. He scoffed at Su Yu's suggestion and refused it in every possible way. In the end, he even drove Su Yu away. This caused the other tribes to be unprepared, and their defensive formations were destroyed by the traitor. Then they were attacked by the destruction of the Holy Mountain. Shanglong must definitely take responsibility for this matter. After listening, the common people and peerless almighties who did not know the truth were all indignant. They had thought that it was a natural disaster and that it was inevitable. How could they have known that there was such a hidden story? If Shanglong had been willing to listen to a little advice, the losses would not have been so heavy, but he did not. The golden dragon angrily rebuked. Hearing that, the people were furious. Such an incompetent commander caused the deaths of all the creatures in the Middle Abyss. What's the point of keeping him alive? Execute him. He must be executed. The people were seething with anger. Shanglong did not budge. He looked at them coldly and said, "I judged the situation and made the right decision. I have a clear conscience." He had a righteous look on his face. Slap! The demon emperor stepped forward and slapped him, causing him to fall to the ground. A clear conscience? Say this to all the living beings that you've killed. He had committed such a grave mistake, and yet he did not feel the slightest bit of remorse. He was still boasting shamelessly and had a clear conscience. He took out a demonic knife and pointed it at Shanglong. "A person like you will only harm our own people if we keep you alive." Just as he was about to strike, all of a sudden, the heaven-splitting ancestor rushed over and stopped him. "You can't kill him." He secretly sent a telepathic message to the demon emperor. "This person is a descendant of the ancient god Jiolong. If we kill him, there will be trouble when we cross the abyss." The demon emperor did not care. The ancient god Jiolong no longer has any contact with his descendants. On the contrary, he has become a threat to them. He may not strike for his descendants. The heaven-splitting ancestor said, "It's better to be safe than sorry." If the ancient god Jiolong really takes his anger out on us, who can stop him? Don't forget that the human ancestor is seriously injured, and his condition is unknown. Chapter 28:53. Whether the Renzu was dead or alive was still unknown. It was impossible to tell whether he had fought or not. When the Middle Abyss was destroyed, the human ancestor did not do anything. He couldn't pin his hopes on him. After some thought, the demon emperor sheathed his demonic saber. Shanglong rolled its eyes and immediately understood what they were afraid of. It said proudly, "What? You're not going to kill me anymore." With ancient god, Nine Dragon present, who would dare to casually kill him? "Since you're not going to kill us, then scram to the side." Shanglong wantonly spoke, completely disregarding the devil emperor and the others. Then he stared at Su Yu, clasped his hand behind his back, and asked, "What do you think? What do you want to do to me?" Su Yu stood up slowly and said, "Do you think I'm afraid of the ancient god Jiolong?" He and ancient god, Nine Dragon, were already mortal enemies. Did he need to care about ancient god Nine Dragon? The ascendant dragon smiled faintly and said proudly, "You are not afraid, but are the people around you not afraid? If you really kill me, ancient god Jiolong will bring disaster upon all of you. If they are injured in any way, it will be your responsibility alone." The Shanglong was determined to kill Su Yu. He was willing to sacrifice his heart blood for the sake of the common people. Then, how could he put the common people in danger? Without a doubt, he would choose to compromise. Ascendant Dragon, don't go overboard. Even Patriarch Skysplitter couldn't stand it any longer. This person was too arrogant. He should have deserved to die 1,000 times for his crimes. Now that he was given a chance to live, not only did he not feel grateful, he even became even more vicious. How am I going overboard? You detained me for no reason, and now you want me to know that I'm guilty? That's really going overboard. Shanglong was getting more and more arrogant. He looked down at the angry eyes of the common people. His face was full of sneers. So what if he was angry? Didn't he still have to swallow his anger? Finally, he looked at Su Yu and strode forward, pushing away all the creatures in front of him. She brought a stool over and sat in front of Su Yu. He crossed his legs, smirked, and hooked his finger. Come, give me some chaotic energy first. Su Yu's face was indifferent. You probably don't know me. Anyone who knew Su Yu well knew that he had already decided to kill them. I don't care whose descendant you are. Just kill him. As for whether it would harm the common people, he would use his life to protect them. He would never be controlled by others because of this. I don't need to understand you. I only need to know that you were beneath me in the past, and you're still beneath me now. Whatever I tell you to do, you'll do it. Pliosaurus said coldly. Imbue me with primal chaos energy immediately, whether you're willing or not. So you laughed coldly. As he waved his palm, a strand of holy body power gushed out. It turned into a slender sword that was 1,000 feet long. Upon seeing this, the pliosaur was naturally shocked and retreated rapidly. You dare to attack me? Use your brain to think clearly first. Was there a need to think further? Su Yu held the 1,000-foot-long thin sword in his hand, and without hesitation, he thrust it toward his opponent. The astonishing sword chi pierced through the air. The Shanglong was shocked and tumbled down from his chair. He scrambled toward heaven-splitting Patriarch, shouting as he ran, "Save me!" Among them, Patriarch Skysplitting was the most rational. He would definitely save her. Indeed, heaven-splitting Patriarch didn't disappoint him. Sensing Su Yu's actions, the heaven-splitting ancestor shouted immediately, "No!" He himself quickly rushed over to rescue them. Seeing this scene, the Shanglong calmed down. What could Su Yu do to a strong man like the heaven-splitting Patriarch? However, a piercing coldness penetrated his body. Lowering his head, he saw a sharp, 8-colored needle protruding from his chest. The Shanglong turned around in disbelief and met Su Yu's cold eyes. You deserve to die. With a shake of his palm, he killed the Shanglong, both his body and soul. Up until his death, the Shanglong had never expected that he, a middle-stage Heaven Law Master, would be killed by Su Yu without the slightest resistance. With the destruction of his soul, the Shanglong vanished into thin air. By the time the heaven-splitting Patriarch rushed over, it was already too late. He couldn't help but chide Su Yu. How could you kill the Shanglong? Even if you didn't give him the primal chaos energy, you shouldn't have killed him. Su Yu withdrew the 8 great domains calmly and said calmly, "The ancient god Jiulong is no longer a member of our race. It's unwise to pin our hopes of crossing the abyss on him." Would the ancient god Jiulong stop stirring up trouble if he didn't kill the Shanglong? That might not be the case. He had been trapped in the abyss for so many years and had long since mutated into a giant beast. He was by no means a kind person. The heaven-splitting Patriarch had nothing to say. He could only sigh, his face full of worry. Now that things have come to this, there's no need to worry so much. The Demon Emperor walked over, full of approval for Su Yu's actions. What was to come would come eventually. He couldn't lower his head to the ancient god Jiulong and curry his favor. Su Yu nodded. After this incident, I hope you will conduct a screening of the common people. Those who don't meet the criteria should be rejected. He wanted to protect the people who deserved to be protected. He didn't want to protect those who were sinful or deserving of Su Yu's help. The Demon Emperor and the heaven-splitting Patriarch couldn't agree more. Su Yu was taking such a huge risk. He couldn't let some unscrupulous people pick up their chopsticks to eat, put them down, and curse. In that case, Only then did Suyu feel completely at ease and start extracting the blood from the heart. Time passed slowly. A day later, all the common people were ready to receive the primal chaos energy. After a few struggles, Suyu extracted a drop of blood from the heart. He flicked the drop of blood into the air with a flick of his finger. Then, he blew out a breath of air, blowing the blood into a bloody mist. The bloody mist was filled with an astonishing amount of primal chaos energy. It descended from the sky like a thick layer of atmosphere, shrouding the earth. All the living beings present had the opportunity to breathe it into their bodies. Of course, from a moment the primal chaos energy entered the body, it needed a process. It took 5 days for Su Yu and Xiao Dai to fuse the power of primal chaos. Ordinary creatures would only need a longer time to do so. After everything was done, Su Yu's face turned pale. Although he had only extracted a drop of blood, he felt extremely exhausted. His eyelids couldn't help but droop, and he was about to fall asleep. At the critical moment, he bit the tip of his tongue, using the pain to stimulate himself so that he wouldn't fall asleep. Otherwise, he would fall into the same nightmare as before. But he was too tired. After a brief stab of pain, his brain fell into a state of dizziness again. It was extremely difficult to keep his eyelids open. There was a pair of big hands pulling Su Yu's consciousness toward some dark place. That big hand must be the mirror flower heavenly prince in his nightmare. Just as his eyes were about to fall into a deep slumber, a voice suddenly rang out. All of a sudden, his face heated up. His drowsy consciousness woke up immediately. He opened his eyes abruptly. Qingyan saw that the situation was not good. She immediately came out of the cage and covered his face with her palm. Wisps of primal chaos energy traveled from her body to Su Yu's heart through her palm. It slightly replenished the primal chaos energy that his heart had lost. In this way, Su Yu did not fall into a deep sleep. Fortunately, I made it in time. Qing Yun retracted her palm in relief. Her eyes filled with helplessness. You are too bold. Su Yu's actions were too risky. If he saw the stone statue of the mirror flower heavenly prince again, he might not be able to wake up. If he was strangled to death by the stone statue of the mirror flower heavenly prince, his consciousness would disappear forever. Chapter 2854. Many thanks. Su Yu was extremely grateful. If it wasn't for Qing Yun, they would have been in big trouble. It's my duty, Qing Yun said. She looked at the living beings who were sitting cross-legged on the ground and said, However, because of your kindness, all living beings have been saved. As long as they fuse the chaotic qi into their bodies, they will have the chance to enter a 9-star civilization. But Qing Yun glanced at the 500 sacred mountains hovering above the inner abyss. He didn't know if he could make it in time. If the life extermination thunder was successfully condensed, then the inner abyss would not be able to escape. I hope that I can make it in time, Su Yu muttered. While time was still limited, Su Yu returned to the Heavenly Court's battleship and came to the side of the sinful lady. At this moment, Sinful Girl was still in a deep meditative state and had yet to wake up. However, the aura around him was getting stronger and stronger. Even though Su Yu had broken through to the peak of the early stage of the Master of the Heavenly Law, he still felt terrified. Could it be that he really is comparable to the Emperor? Su Yu was secretly shocked. Shua, at this moment, Yun Yazi rushed over. He couldn't leave Su Yu's side for fear that he would be threatened by the Nirvana Master. We found the evil girl. Yun Yazi was slightly stunned. Then, a complicated expression appeared on his face. I knew she wasn't dead, Yun Yazi said. What you killed back then should have only been half of her body, right? Yun Yazi understood the sinful woman better than anyone else. So you knew about the past between Yun Yazi and the sinful woman. As an outsider, Su Yu had no right to ask for Yun Yazi's forgiveness for the grudges between them. He only said, Master, please don't make a move for now. Yun Yazi smiled faintly. The hatred from back then has long since faded away with time. Indeed, even though he was severely injured by the sinful woman and was on the verge of death, Yun Yazi was still protecting the mystery of the sinful woman's origins. He cared for this sinful girl from the bottom of his heart. The so-called hatred had long since dispersed. Protect her well, Yun Yazi said. What she lacks is the love and concern of the human world. So you look pensive. The sinful woman was indeed cold and heartless. However, the heartless her had saved his life once. Understand. So you said, after thinking for a while, she said, Master, can you tell me if Xia Jingyu is also a vessel from Mirror Flower Heaven? He saw a sinful girl and Qingyan. The two of them had the same soul and appearance as Xia Jingyu. How could he not understand? Xia Jingyu was also a vessel. He just wasn't willing to accept it. Yun Yazi sighed silently. When I first saw her, I warned you that nothing would happen between you two. So, he knew Xia Jingyu's identity from the start. However, at that time, Su Yu's cultivation and realm were too low, so he couldn't understand such matters. Su Yu clenched his fists. He could not accept it. Xia Jingyu was a vessel created by the Emperor. However, although she is a vessel, her soul is real. Yin Yazi looked at Su Yu deeply. Everything that happened between the two of you really happened. There is nothing fake about it. Su Yu nodded deeply. He had never doubted her for that. Xia Jingyu was one of the few people in the world who would not betray him. Also, if possible, find him as soon as you arrive at the 9-star civilization, Yun Yazi said. The Son of Heaven of the Sacred Mountain should be making a move very soon to take away the stone in Xia Jingyu's body. No one can say for sure if the Emperor will spare her life after taking it out. Hearing this, Su Yu's heart tightened. Indeed, you should be looking for Xia Jingyu. They had been apart for 100 years. He wondered how Xia Jingyu was now. Was she safe and sound in the Divine Lady tribe? At this moment, he suddenly had a strong desire to enter the 9-star civilization. There was a woman who had been waiting for him there all along. He waited in torment. Time passed little by little. More and more people successfully integrated with the chaotic energy. Half a month later, anyone who had obtained the chaotic energy had completed the integration. In the sky, the thunder of annihilation on the sacred mountain had been brewed to the last moment. Countless thunderbolts could be seen coming from within the sacred mountain. With a casual flash, they released a power that could destroy heaven and earth, causing the formation of the inner abyss to shake incessantly. The thunder of annihilation on the sacred mountain is about to be completed. There is no time to lose. Let's get ready to set off immediately. Yun Yazi, the demon emperor, and the heaven-splitting ancestor gathered around Su Yu again. The inner abyss had to be abandoned. After making arrangements for the people, let's go. Su Yu did not dare to delay. They came to the edge of the cliff of the inner abyss and stared at the incomparably dark abyss. The creatures of the inner abyss rushed over one after another. Among them was Nirvana. The master of Nirvana sat cross-legged at the bow of the ship, his face full of compassion. I, Nirvana, am willing to help you cross the abyss. He spread out his arms, and 80 to 90% of the dark cave dwellings actually recovered their brightness. That was because the believers had stabilized and accumulated a certain amount of faith. Yun Yazi and the others frowned. The participation of the Master in Nirvana was not a good thing. However, who asked him to control the boundless power of faith? He could absolutely crush them. With the destruction of the sacred mountain, it was not advisable for internal strife. They suppressed their disgust and acquiesced to his participation. The Master of Nirvana smiled and retracted his arms again. Little did they know, among the many cavern worlds, more than half of the worlds had quietly changed their faith. In a certain cavern world, the Six-Path Fairy clapped her hands and looked at the statue of Su Yu in the last cavern world. She smiled with satisfaction. At this point, the cavern worlds under her jurisdiction had quietly changed their faith. All the statues were replaced with Su Yu's. Moreover, they had accumulated a lot of power of faith. The only problem now was how to safely escape from the Master of Nirvana with so many cavern worlds. If they were not careful and were discovered by the Master of Nirvana, all the cavern worlds would be destroyed. Just as the mission was about to be completed, a cold laugh pierced through the cavern world. Six-Path Fairy, how dare you? The voice of the Red-Foot Demon echoed loudly. At the same time, the cavern world was forcibly broken open. The Redfoot demon led a group of Earth apostles and broke into this place. The Six-Path Fairy's expression changed slightly. She did not think she could hide it forever. After all, such a big move would more or less leak some information. Betraying the Master of Nirvana is a crime punishable by death. The Redfoot demon could not help but laugh. He had already noticed the Six-Path Fairy's little trick. He just deliberately suppressed it and did not say anything. He was waiting for the Six-Path Fairy to replace all the statues and attract the wrath of the Master of Nirvana. Now it was finally time. The Six-Path Fairy was expressionless. She whistled. Immediately, her Earth apostles swarmed in from all directions. The two sides confronted each other in the air, erupting unprecedented smoke. It looked like a war was about to break out. However, the Redfoot demon laughed and slowly retreated. Do you think I'm here to fight with you? Why would I risk my life to fight with you when I am about to die? I have already sent someone to inform the Great Guardian. He will be here soon. But the Six-Path Fairy's face was indifferent. If I die, do you think you can live? Chapter 2855. However, it was already too late. One of the Earth Apostles behind him suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. Killing intent shot out from his eyes. He was already prepared and took out a sharp awl that contained 6 gray streams of air and stabbed it into the Scarlet Foot Demon's back. His unusual action immediately caused the surrounding Earth Apostles to become furious. All of them made their moves, wanting to exterminate this traitorous Earth Apostle. Who knew? There were actually 2 traitors among the group of Earth Apostles. They took the chance to attack their own people. This caused them to fall into chaos. The traitor with the awl stabbed it further into the Scarlet Foot Demon's back. You betrayed me. The Scarlet Foot Demon roared in anger. He recognized that the awl was a Nirvana weapon personally made by Six Paths Immortal. Once it entered his body, the Six Paths Chi would seal his soul vessel. Obviously, many years ago, Six Paths Immortal had placed a trusted aide beside the Scarlet Foot Demon, waiting for a day to deal him an unexpected blow. And now it came in handy. Unfortunately, he only realized now, but it was already too late. The Scarlet Foot Demon's soul was quickly extinguished. Not long after, it was completely destroyed. Once he died, Six Paths Immortal sighed, let out a sigh of relief. Only Six Paths Immortal remained vigilant and inspected the Scarlet Foot Demon's body. In the end, his power had just covered the Scarlet Foot Demon's body. The body suddenly bounced up. Then, he retreated like a fish. Then, he looked at the wound on his back. The wound split open from a 3-inch square hole. It quickly exploded in all directions. Finally, with a bang, a wave of air exploded. A smaller Scarlet Foot Demon crawled out, its body dark gold. Around it were remnants of black armor and flesh. This was the Scarlet Foot Demon's true body. Outside of his body was a fake body to confuse the enemy. At the crucial moment, it died in his place. The main body hid inside and acted according to the situation. He originally wanted to fake his death, but Six Paths Immortal was extremely vigilant and wanted to inspect the body. Left with no choice, the main body could only escape. His rebirth caused the Earth Apostles to be overjoyed. They all rushed over to protect him. Then, they quickly retreated while protecting him. The Scarlet Foot Demon sneered. Six Paths Immortal, you're dead. On the other hand, the Sixth Taoist deity looked embarrassed. The Barefoot Demon was too cunning and had hidden himself too deeply. The 3 trusted subordinates of the Redfoot Demon had never found out that the Redfoot Demon had another body. Seeing the Redfoot Demon escape under the protection of the crowd, it was impossible for the Six Path Immortal to stop him. The matter was completely exposed. He was in big trouble. Now, not to mention handing over their faith to Su Yu, it was hard to say whether they could even escape. After all, someone had already gone to send a message to the Chief Protector. Just as Barefoot Demon and the others were about to escape, among the apostles protecting the Barefoot Demon, suddenly, one of them had a strange look on his face. He silently took out a thread and wrapped it around the dark golden Scarlet Foot Devil's neck. Then, he tightened his grip. The Barefoot Demon was beheaded. He died tragically on the spot. The 2 eyes on his head were still filled with bewilderment and confusion before his death. Before his consciousness completely dissipated, he turned around with difficulty to look at the person behind him. The man grinned and tore off his disguise. That was no one else. It was Gu Taishu. It's you? The barefoot demon couldn't understand. Why was it Gu Taishu who killed him? If Gu Taishu had told him, the six-path immortal might have changed his faith. Gu Taishu and Suyu were old enemies. Why would he help Suyu's friend, the six-path immortal, to kill him? His mind was filled with bewilderment, and he couldn't understand Gu Taishu's behavior. When the apostles realized this, they were both enraged and attacked Gu Taishu. Gu Taishu just smiled faintly. 9 ferocious ancient beasts appeared around him and instantly enveloped them in a mist of blood. Even the corpse of the barefoot demon was devoured in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Gu Taishu's cultivation was increasing at an obvious speed. He licked his lips in satisfaction. Haha, do you think Gu Taishu, could be enslaved by anyone? The scene made the six-path immortal and the others gasp in shock. What kind of horrible evil technique was this? It was too evil. The six-path immortal stared at Gu Taishu and frowned. She felt that this person seemed familiar. She seemed to have seen him before, but she couldn't remember where. However, he was too evil and definitely not a good person. She secretly contacted her people and slowly retreated, leaving the Nirvana worship. Don't worry. Gu Taishu smiled faintly. I was sent by the barefoot demon to inform the Great Guardian. So, he didn't go to inform them. Currently, no one knew what happened here. Why are you helping us? The six-path immortal asked. Gu Taishu sneered. Why? Just know that if you listen to me, you can live. The six-path immortal was skeptical. What do you want us to do? Gu Taishu said faintly. It's simple. Bring all of these beliefs to Suyu, and I will protect you. The six-path immortal was suspicious. Would he really be so kind as to help them? As if he had seen through their thoughts, Gu Taishu said, You have no choice but to trust me. The six-path immortal didn't deny it. That was true. The death of the barefoot demon couldn't be hidden for long. It wouldn't be long before all the cavern worlds were taken away. What awaited them would be the thunderous fury of the Nirvana Lord. I am proficient in a secret technique that can create fake cavern worlds to temporarily replace you. Meanwhile, you will try your best to find Suyu. As he spoke, Gu Taishu released one of the ancient beasts. This ancient beast had the ability to create illusions, making it difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. The six-path immortal believed most of them. Immediately, he organized the cavern worlds under his jurisdiction and put them all into his pocket. Then he left quietly. Gu Taishu fabricated a large number of fake cavern worlds to deceive everyone. However, when everything was ready, Gu Taishu's lips curled into a sinister smile. Suyu, you will die this time. The six-path immortal. She brought a group of Earth apostles to seek refuge with Suyu. However, the more she thought about it, the more she felt something was wrong. Then, she quietly stopped somewhere on the ground. My lord, are you doubting that person's motives? One of her subordinates was also uneasy. The six-path immortal nodded deeply. She had placed her subordinates by the side of the barefoot demon for many years, so her intelligence was not low. There must be a trap. The six-path immortal pondered. I should inform Suyu about this and ask him to make a decision. In her heart, there was no conspiracy that Suyu couldn't predict. As she spoke, she carefully took out half of her precious heart-shaped communication device. Her eyes were filled with anxiety, excitement, and uneasiness. After hesitating for a while, she bit her red lips and sent a message into it. Suyu, who was urging the people to come to the cliff. He was shocked. Chapter 28:56. Suyu was shocked. If not for the message, he would have forgotten about it. She is still alive. Suyu could not help but look at the worship of the Nirvana Master in the distance. Filled with excitement, Suyu immediately opened the communication device and read the message. After reading it, there was no joy on his face. Instead, there was a solemn expression. He learned that the Six Paths Fairy had brought more than half of the Nirvana Master's believers to him. So you cannot be happy, because it was indicated that it was a person surrounded by blood fog and skilled in using beast souls. Suyu narrowed his eyes. Surrounded by blood fog, skilled in beast souls, and a nirvana master. Who was this person? The answer was obvious. Gu Taishu. Why would he help the Six Paths Fairy out of kindness, and help Suyu obtain so many believers? Would Gu Taishu be so stupid as his life and death rival? Suyu replied immediately and asked the Six Paths Fairy to explain everything clearly. On the other side, the Six Paths Fairy waited anxiously. To be honest, she was not sure if Suyu still had the half-heart-shaped communication device that she had given him. After all, such a long time had passed, but she felt an inexplicable sweetness in her heart. The communication device in her palm vibrated. Not only did Suyu reply, but he did so immediately. After reading Suyu's message, she quickly sorted out the ins and outs of the matter. When Suyu saw it, he immediately understood Gu Taishu's intentions. Gu Taishu wants to provoke a war between me and the Nirvana Master to kill me. Suyu immediately saw the stakes. Everyone knew that the Nirvana Master wanted to kill Suyu, but he might not do it before the Nine-Star Civilization. After all, his greatest enemy was the Holy Mountain, and Suyu was surrounded by experts. But taking away more than half of his believers was a different story. Believers were the lifeline of the Nirvana Master. How could he allow others to take them away? It would be strange if he did not fly into a rage on the spot. If everything goes according to plan, he will expose you to the Nirvana Master before you bring the believers to me. Suyu said in a low voice. Moreover, he must have done something in some cavern world to prevent you from bringing the believers to me successfully. Wasn't Gu Taishu worried that the believers would fall into Suyu's hands? Of course he was. Therefore, he definitely had a backup plan. Suyu thought about it again and commanded, You immediately order people to check all the major cavern worlds. I think there is at least one or more positioning magical treasure. It's highly likely that Gu Taishu will be able to locate you based on these locator treasures and report you to the Lord of Nirvana. That way, he'll be able to swindle the credit and kill two birds with one stone. Not only had he incited the Nirvana Master's desire to kill Suyu, but he had also made a great contribution and received a reward from the Nirvana Master. Needless to say, it was really killing two birds with one stone. Hearing this, the Immortal of the Six Paths did as he was told. He ordered the ambassadors and disciples to start inspecting the cavern worlds they were in charge of. Not to mention, he actually found two locator magic treasures. One of them was even more deeply hidden. If it weren't for the fact that they had absolute control over the cavern world and could quickly find out the fluctuations of the magic treasures, he was afraid that Gu Taishu would really succeed. Looking at the two locator treasures, the Six Daos Immortal couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If Gu Taishu really brought the Lord of Nirvana over based on the signals of these locating treasures, these traitors were really going to die without a burial ground. Fortunately, I asked Suyu. The Six Daos Immortals secretly rejoiced at his vigilance and didn't rashly trust Gu Taishu. Otherwise, he would have been betrayed by him and counted the money for him. My lord, Suyu's divine physique is too amazing, a disciple said in shock. Just by combing through the matter once, the other party had already speculated most of the conspiracy. He understood it even more clearly than those who had experienced it themselves. The Six Daos Immortal pursed her lips and smiled. Haven't you heard that Suyu's divine physique is best at scheming? In her memory, there was never a person whose scheming ability could be compared to Suyu's. We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go. The Six Daos Immortal didn't destroy the positioning magical treasure. Instead, he caught two demonic beasts, stuffed the positioning magical treasure into their stomachs, and drove them in another direction. For safety's sake, we will approach Suyu through a winding route, the Six Daos Immortal said. At that time, Gu Taishu was sitting cross-legged in the cavern world. After a while, he opened his eyes slightly and looked at a crystal plate in his palm. There were two beams of red light flashing on it. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. It's almost time. Suyu, I wonder how you would feel if you watched the woman who loved you die in front of you. As he spoke, he got up and left the Nirvana warship. Before he left, the chief guardian noticed him. He frowned and said, "You are one of my disciples, right? Where are you going?" Disciples could not leave the Nirvana worship without the permission of the guardian. Gu Taishu said calmly, "I have something urgent to report to the Nirvana master." The chief guardian narrowed his eyes and said softly, "You are very bold." Gu Taishu was his disciple, so he should report everything to his direct superior first. Reporting to someone at a higher level meant that he didn't take him seriously. Gu Taishu said calmly, "Chief Guardian, instead of making things difficult for me, I think it's better for you to take a look at the cavern world under your jurisdiction." Huh? What happened to the cavern world? The chief guardian was surprised. However, those cavern worlds were under the control of his master and disciples. So what? This Gu Taishu, on the other hand, was abnormal and annoying. "Come here," the chief guardian ordered. Gu Taishu said calmly, "I'm sorry, I have decided to quit working for you. Now, you have no right to interfere." Hearing that, the chief guardian laughed angrily. His subordinates could quit and come in whenever they wanted? "It's not up to you." The chief guardian sneered and stood up. He turned into a beam of light and attacked the chief guardian. Gu Taishu was prepared and released the 9 ferocious beasts. His cultivation was quite high, and after eating the Redfoot demon and the Earth apostles, his cultivation had skyrocketed. Although he was not as good as the chief guardian, he was not far behind. After exchanging blows, Gu Taishu was only pushed back. He was not injured. He took the opportunity to retreat and flew toward the Nirvana master. One chased and the other chased. Soon, it attracted the attention of the Nirvana master. What a scandal! The Nirvana master frowned and shouted. Only then did the two stop. The chief guardian said, reporting to the Nirvana master, "This person disobeyed orders and left the Nirvana worship without permission. I'm trying to catch him." The Nirvana master looked at Gu Taishu with eyes full of unfamiliarity and said indifferently, "Then kill him." The Nirvana master never forgave those who disobeyed him. Gu Taishu said calmly, reporting to the Nirvana master, "I have an important matter to inform you urgently, so I had no choice but to do so." The Nirvana master said indifferently, "No matter what urgent matter it is not a reason for you to disobey the orders of your superior." The Nirvana master created had a strict hierarchy. Chapter 28:57. More than half of the Lord of Nirvana's cavern world has been taken away by someone. Can't you do that? Gu Taishu said calmly. What? The Lord of Nirvana furrowed his brows. He immediately spread his arms and looked at the monk robes on his sides. On the left, there were still countless cavern worlds dotted like galaxies. However, on the right side, it was pitch black and there was not a single cavern world left. Bang! Due to his shock, an extremely powerful airflow erupted from the Lord of Nirvana's body, sending the Chief Guardian and Gu Taishu flying on the spot. Within the shockwave, the two of them were injured to varying degrees. Blood trickled down the corners of Gu Taishu's mouth. He barely steadied himself and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Not only was he not angry, but he also lowered his head and sneered. Good. The angrier the Nirvana Master was, the nearer Su Yu was to death. Who took it? The Lord of Nirvana's powerful aura pressed down on Gu Taishu. All of a sudden, Gu Taishu's body went limp and he knelt on the ground. His face was filled with fear and trepidation as he said, "Lord of Nirvana, it was done by the deity of the 6 realms, who is under the command of the Great Protector." He looked carefully at the Great Protector and said, "That is why I have to bypass the Great Protector and report to you alone." In other words, he was worried that the Great Protector would be involved and kill him to silence him. Hearing this, the Lord of Nirvana's gaze was like lightning, fiercely shooting towards the Great Protector. As a result, a huge bloody hole was blasted in the Chief Protector's chest with a loud bang. Just a little more and his life would be in danger. It was obvious that the Nirvana Lord had fallen into an irrational rage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have attacked a subordinate who had been loyal to him for many years. Chief Protector endured the pain and said, "I didn't know." The Lord of Nirvana retracted his gaze. His gaze just now contained a trace of probing, and he had already searched through the other party's soul. He confirmed that the chief protector was not involved. "I'll spare your life. I'll interrogate you later," the Nirvana Lord said. Although the chief protector did not participate in it, there was still the crime of not being strict with his subordinates. His body trembled, and he lowered his head. However, he glanced at Gu Taishu out of the corner of his eye. His eyes were filled with hatred. Gu Taishu was definitely doing it on purpose. Him reporting to the Lord of Nirvana alone was equivalent to putting him, the great protector, on the rack to roast. Now, he was accused of not being strict with his subordinates. Coincidentally, Gu Taishu also looked at him, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. He did it on purpose. Not only did he want the barefooted demon dead, he also wanted the chief protector dead. At the very least, he would take away his position. Therefore, Gu Taishu took a step forward and started to make a contribution. "Lord of Nirvana, I can't think of a way to recover all the lost cavern worlds." The Lord of Nirvana, who was looking around for the cavern world, was shocked. He had already searched all the cavern worlds just now, and he had lost contact with them. If the other party could hide in the sea of people, it would be very difficult to find him. Moreover, they were about to enter the abyss. How would he have the time to find it? Hearing Gu Taishu's words, how could he not be moved? He faced Gu Taishu with an expectant look and promised on the spot, "If you can find a cavern world, I can satisfy whatever you want." He glanced at the chief protector and said, "Including the position of protector." Gu Taishu was overjoyed. Everything was going according to his plan. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. "Thank you, Suyu. Thank you, your woman, for helping me." He immediately took out the crystal plate and pointed at the 2 red dots on it. He said, "I sensed that the six-path deities were up to no good, so I placed the coordinates in the 2 cavern worlds. You can still make it if you rush over now." Hearing that, the Lord of Nirvana couldn't help but applaud. "What's your name?" "Gu Taishu, Lord of Nirvana." The Lord of Nirvana said, "Good. Gu Taishu, you have done very well. With such a temperament, you will definitely achieve great things in the future. Let's go. Find a cavern world." The Lord of Nirvana squinted his eyes. "I also want to kill those traitors with my own hands." His eyes were full of killing intent. It came like a storm. The group of people immediately chased after them. With the 2 positioning treasures, it wasn't difficult to find them. The chief protector followed at the back. His heart was extremely heavy. He could already see his future situation. Even if the punishment was not too severe, he would still retain his position as the chief protector. However, it would be difficult to gain the trust of the Lord of Nirvana in the future. If it was him, his subordinates would have lost more than half of his cavern world without realizing it. How could he put such an incompetent person in an important position? In a fit of anger, he might even kill him. And all of this was because of this insidious Gu Taishu. In his heart, he had already crushed Gu Taishu's bones into ashes countless times. Unfortunately, if nothing went wrong, Gu Taishu would be the one in power in the future. He would gradually lose his advantage and be suppressed by Gu Taishu. Not only could he not vent his anger, but he also had to swallow it himself. Thinking of this, his heart became heavier. On the contrary, Gu Taishu was delighted. It was as if he had already seen the scene of himself being above everyone else. Given time, he might even be able to devour the Lord of Nirvana. He would replace the Lord of Nirvana and become a powerful existence above many peerless experts. By then, what would Suyu be? Beep. Right at this moment, 2 beeps came from the crystal plate. Gu Taishu was a little excited. He said, "Almost found one." He looked at the crystal plate, excited and a little surprised. The 2 positioning treasures on it showed that they had separated. This shouldn't be the case. All the cavern worlds should have been kept together by the 6 Paths Fairy. How could they be separated? Did the 6 Paths Fairy divide the cavern world into 2 parts for Suyu to be safe? So the 2 positioning treasures just happened to be separated? This was probably the reason. He was not sure. Looking at the nearest positioning treasure, he guided the Lord of Nirvana and the others to hurry over. In the end, they didn't catch up with the 6 Paths Fairy and the others. Instead, it was a demonic beast that was running happily. The beast sensed that the experts were chasing it. It blinked its innocent eyes and ran away. but it was still forced into a corner. The Lord of Nirvana killed it mercilessly and cut open its stomach. A locator magic treasure that was emitting waves was dug out. The Lord of Nirvana's face darkened. "This is the positioning treasure you mentioned?" Gu Taishu looked a little uneasy. He said hurriedly, "Maybe they found one of the positioning treasures, so they tied it to the demonic beast to lure us away. There is another one." He looked at the trajectory of the other one, which happened to be heading straight for Suyu. He felt relieved. It seemed that this speculation was correct. "Fortunately, I placed two positioning treasures at the same time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable," Gu Taishu said to himself. Chapter 2858. Whether or not they could find the lost cavern world depended on the last locator. After half a cup of tea's time, Gu Taishu stared at the red dot on the crystal plate, which was getting closer and closer. His face lit up with joy. "We'll catch up soon." The red dot kept moving in the direction of Suyu. Who would believe that it wasn't the Six Paths Fairy? Nirvana Master's killing intent surged. "You betrayed me for a man?" Hee. The Six Paths Fairy's fate would be terrible. It was even more terrible than death. "It's getting closer." They chased into a reed bush that was as tall as two people. Looking at the red that was not far from him, Gu Taishu was eager to make a contribution, so he flew over first. He flew over the empty spot in the air. Then he used his precious technique to burn everything nearby, revealing the Six Paths Fairy who was hiding. Gu Taishu looked down, and the smile on his face froze. What appeared in front of him was not the immortal of the Six Paths, but a burnt bear demon. Nirvana Master rushed over, and the smile on his face faded. It was replaced by a gloomy look. He pinched the air and crushed the body of the demon bear. He took out a locator that was constantly emitting signals from the body. Nirvana Master's face was gloomy as he said in a low voice, "Is this the other locator you mentioned?" At this moment, even Gu Taishu was at a loss. Both locators have been found. Did the Six Paths Fairy see through my plan and discover both locators in advance? Did she use it to lure us away? It shouldn't be. How could that woman know what I wanted to do? Wait. Gu Taishu's eyes narrowed immediately. Could it be Suyu? If that woman had a way to contact Suyu. Thinking of this, Gu Taishu's heart trembled and hatred grew. It should be Suyu. It couldn't be wrong. Only Suyu could see through his plan so easily and set up a series of countermeasures. All his plans had been destroyed. At this moment, the Chief Guardian said in a strange tone, "Nirvana Master, I'm very curious. Since Gu Taishu discovered the Six Paths Fairy's plan, why didn't he report it to you until she succeeded? Moreover, why didn't the two locators he set up work at all? Instead, they led us in circles and wasted the best opportunity to intercept the Six Paths Fairy?" In other words, he suspected that Gu Taishu was behind all this. Nirvana Lord narrowed his eyes. Indeed, from the very beginning, it was all Gu Taishu's one-sided story. Gu Taishu immediately tried to explain himself. He then said sincerely, "Master Nirvana, please believe me. I really did set up the tracking device, but the other party was guided by Suyu, so he discovered it and intentionally lured us away." The Great Guardian chuckled. Can Suyu predict the future and see the past? If you didn't tell him, how would he know that there are locators in the cavern world? Moreover, there are two of them. Gu Taishu was at a loss for words. It was true that Suyu couldn't see the future or the past, but he was really good at calculating. With just a few clues, he could analyze the ins and outs of a matter. It could be said to be terrifying. Those who had not competed with Suyu in terms of intelligence would not know how frightening he was. Gu Taishu said, "Lord of Nirvana, if I were to betray you, why would I do this? Wouldn't it be easier for the sixth Taoist immortal to escape if he doesn't report it?" The Lord of Nirvana pondered. That's true. If Gu Taishu hadn't reported it, the sixth Taoist immortal would have successfully delivered the entire cavern world to Suyu. If he were a traitor, there would be no need for him to do this. Not only would he increase the risk of this trip, but he would also put himself in danger. The Great Guardian was about to continue questioning him. The Lord of Nirvana waved his hand. The enemy is too cunning. Gu Taishu's plan has failed. He looked at Gu Taishu and said indifferently, I said that you will only be rewarded if you find the cavern world. Since you didn't find it, go back to your original position and work. Hearing that, the great guardian stopped arguing. Instead, he retreated calmly. When he looked at Gu Taishu out of the corner of his eye, he smiled coldly. Go back to his original position? That was to return to his jurisdiction. Gu Taishu still wanted to live a good life? Huh! How could the great guardian be satisfied if he didn't crush Gu Taishu into ashes? Gu Taishu's heart sank. He thought that this time, he was confident of winning, so he went all out. But the result? Not only did he not receive the reward of the Lord of Nirvana to replace the great guardian. Instead, he had offended the Lord of Nirvana. If he really went back to his original position, his fate would be worse than death. Nirvana could not wait any longer. There was no place for him to stay here. Yes, I will take my leave. Gu Taishu took the initiative to leave the Lord of Nirvana as soon as possible. The Great Guardian was about to follow. The Lord of Nirvana said, Great Guardian, dispatch the other guardians to spread out the net. We must find the Six Realms Fairy. Yes, the Great Guardian was helpless. He could only stare at Gu Taishu's back and carry out the Lord of Nirvana's order. At this moment, a bird came quickly. After circling in the sky for a few times, it asked, Have you seen Gu Taishu? Why would the Lord of Nirvana care about a little demon beast? The Great Guardian's eyes flashed and he asked, What do you want from him? The bird said, I am here to send a letter of gratitude to Gu Taishu. A letter of gratitude? Even the Lord of Nirvana squinted his eyes. Who sent it? The bird shook its head. I don't know. I heard others call her the Six Realms Fairy. What? A letter of gratitude from the Six Realms Fairy to Gu Taishu? The Lord of Nirvana grabbed the bird in the air and immediately caught it. He took a letter from the man's chest. He opened it and read it. It said, Thank you, Brother Gu, for protecting us at the risk of your life. We have successfully arrived at our destination. Please find a chance to leave the Lord of Nirvana and join us as soon as possible. Read it. The Lord of Nirvana crushed the letter into pieces in an instant. The Great Guardian said angrily, I told you. Gu Taishu deliberately led us in circles and wasted the best opportunity for us to intercept him. The Lord of Nirvana's face was gloomy and he asked the bird, Where did the Six Realms Fairy give you the letter? The bird shook its head. I don't remember. Humph. The Lord of Nirvana immediately searched the bird's soul. However, he found that the memory of receiving the letter had been deleted. Damn it. The Lord of Nirvana could not tolerate that he was played by a small character like Gu Taishu. If the letter had not fallen into his hands, he would have been kept in the dark. Convey my order. The Lord of Nirvana will hunt down Gu Taishu until he is dead. The Lord of Nirvana roared angrily. The Great Guardian bowed and said yes. He immediately led people to search for Gu Taishu. However, he had already escaped when he saw that the situation was not good. In a corner, Gu Taishu, who was in disguise, looked at the Nirvanas who had come to capture him with great fanfare. Gu Taishu's face was extremely gloomy. He went for wool and came home shorn. Now, the Lord of Nirvana could not be allowed to stay. At that time, in the Heavenly Court's battleship, Suyu looked at the Six Realms Fairy with a smile. His eyes were filled with endless emotions. Chapter 2859. That thank you letter was enough to make Gu Taishu die without a burial place. Suyu smiled faintly. Based on my understanding of Gu Taishu, he may not be dead. He probably ran away when he saw that the situation was not good. The Six-Path deity covered his nose and laughed. I really don't understand what's wrong with him. Why did he insist on being your enemy? To be honest, she felt sorry for Gu Taishu. He failed to plot against Suyu, but was tricked by Suyu and became a stray dog. Suyu smiled lightly and stared at the Six-Path deity. He said sincerely, I'm very happy to see you again. That was what he said from the bottom of his heart. Old acquaintances. One by one, they left him. After a few decades, how could he not be happy to see one again? The Six-Path deity was none other than Sheng Yuanxin. He didn't expect that they would meet again in this way. Sheng Yuanxin's calm face was also filled with undisguised joy. She nodded and said, Me too. I'm so happy that you are still alive. Sheng Yuanxin had seen so many deaths that she was numb to the death of her companions. Unexpectedly, she could see Su Yu again in her lifetime. As she spoke, Sheng Yuanxin took out a glass ball. It was like a starry sky, decorated with countless cavern worlds. "This is a gift for you." Sheng Yuanxin handed it over. Su Yu took it. The moment he touched it, he felt the horrible power of faith gushing out from the crystal ball. The power of faith was 10,000 times stronger than that of the people on the Heaven Court's battleship. If the absorption was successful, he didn't know how powerful his holy body would be. However, it seemed that he couldn't absorb the power of faith. Sheng Yuanxin said, "I just changed all the statues inside to you. They believe in the statues, not the real you, so you can't absorb the power of faith. In the future, you need to do something that will convince the believers and get their approval. Only then can you absorb the power of faith gathered in the statues." So that was it. Su Yu held the crystal ball and suddenly felt it was heavy. When Sheng Yuanxin learned that Su Yu was here, she risked her life to prepare such a valuable gift for him. He didn't prepare anything for Sheng Yuanxin. "What can I do for you?" Su Yu asked. Sheng Yuanxin smiled indifferently. Her smile was exceptionally beautiful. "In my life, there are some people who are worth me risking my life for without asking for anything in return." Su Yu was shocked. Many years ago, he had said something similar to this. That was for Xia Jingyu. It was as if a string in his heart had been pulled, causing his heart to tremble endlessly. Looking at Sheng Yuanxin, who was so close to him, he didn't know how to respond to her feelings. Sheng Yuanxin smiled faintly. "Next, you might have to face the threat of the Lord of Nirvana, and there's a limit to how much I can help you." She was very clear about the Lord of Nirvana's strength. Her strength was as low as a speck of dust. It was useless. "Don't worry, I'll think of a way." After thinking for a moment, Su Yu took out a small lotus throne of evil crossing and said, "Do you want to see your mother, the Sheng deity?" Hearing this, Sheng Yuanxin stood up excitedly, her eyes glistening with joy. Is she still alive? More than 100 years later. She couldn't be sure if her mother, who was only a deity, had passed away. "She's safe and sound, just a lot older," Su Yu murmured. The Sheng deity wasn't the only old one. There was also his father-in-law, the Duke of Xinyu. 200 years had passed, and he was immortal. Even with the nourishment of many elixirs, he couldn't avoid aging. Now his hair was white, and he was getting old. Many of his old friends had also passed away, and their hair had turned white. "Go." So you opened the lotus throne of evil crossing and let Sheng Yuanxin in. An inexplicable sadness surged in his heart. There was no eternity in this world. Everyone would pass away. Qin Xiener was like this, Xie Xiaoya was like this, and all the beauty in life was gone. So you clenched his fists. He didn't feel depressed because of this. Instead, he became more determined in the martial path. Only by transcending all the shackles of the world could he obtain eternity. Looking at the many people who were preparing to enter the abyss, one after another. So he waved his hands, one on each side. A woman appeared in each. They were all in a deep sleep. One of them was Biyun Hongxian. She was harmed by her father, and her bloodline was extracted. She was still in a coma. In the past, he lacked the power of the bloodline and couldn't save her. Now that he controlled the bloodline of the 8 great ancient gods, it wouldn't be difficult to save her again. With a flick of his fingers, a trace of the bloodline of the time and space ancient gods was extracted and inserted into Biyun Hongxian's body. She let out a soft snort, and then slowly opened her eyes. She opened her eyes and looked around at the unfamiliar surroundings. Her memory was still at the moment when her father and Xiaohao conspired to steal her bloodline. Then, she helped Su Yu steal the jade pendant from Xiaohao. "I'm sorry to have implicated you," Su Yu said. Recognizing Su Yu, Biyun Hongxian was relieved and hurriedly said, "Mr. Su, you have to run. Xiaohao has obtained the bloodline of time and space and has become a master of the 2 realms." Su Yu smiled gently. "It's all over." He briefly explained the current situation. After listening, Biyun Hongxian was stunned for a long time and then smiled bitterly. It said that watching a game of chess is a dream for 100 years. "I only slept once, but I'm already 1,000 years old. Biyun Hongxian couldn't adapt to the change in the situation. Go to the nightmare crossing Lotus Seat to rest. The next time you come out, it might be a brand new era. Suyu opened the nightmare crossing Lotus Seat. Biyun Hongxian had no home to return to, so she entered without hesitation. Moreover, she took the initiative to join the Cauldron. Finally, Suyu looked at Luo Shui. Gazing at the pure and holy face, the familiar face, he felt the most complicated emotions. The Red Dust Path Master had controlled her, indirectly causing Xiaoya's death. It had left him with irreparable damage. For a long time, he couldn't face Luo Shui. Now that he was about to leave the void, he summoned up the courage to deal with the things left behind. After a long silence, he pointed his finger between Luo Shui's eyebrows. Her soul, which had been suppressed by the Red Dust Path Master, finally reoccupied her body and slowly regained consciousness. Looking at the unfamiliar environment, Luo Shui was at a loss. When she saw Suyu, she was pleasantly surprised. Suyu. Then she remembered that before she fell into a coma, the Red Dust Path Master had suppressed her soul and used Sukai to threaten Suyu's life. How is Sukai? Luo Shui asked hurriedly. Her heart clenched tightly, and she blamed herself. If anything happened to Sukai she wouldn't be able to forgive herself. She's fine. Nothing happened to her, Suyu said. Looking at Luo Shui's expression, Suyu felt relieved. In the end, Luo Shui was just being used. What had she done wrong? On the contrary, she had been protecting Qin Xian'er and her daughter. Luo Shui heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. That's good, that's good. After a pause, she said, By the way, where's Xian'er? Why don't I see her? Suyu felt a sharp pain in his heart. Chapter 2860. Luo Shui said in surprise, Say something. Where is Xian'er? I want to apologize to her in person. She was nervous, not knowing if Qin Xian'er would forgive her. Qin Xian'er trusted her so much. But in the end, she had taken her daughter hostage, and she had taken the risk to kill the man she valued the most in her life. After a long while, Suyu said hoarsely, She's dead. Dead? Luo Shui was unmoved and even laughed. Then hurry up and resurrect her. Don't think I don't know that you are proficient in the field of life. She thought that Suyu was joking with her. But he wasn't. Suyu said with a desolate look, Xian'er has returned to the void and will never come back. Hearing this, Luo Shui's soft body gradually stiffened. She had been in 8-star civilization for so long. How could she not know what returning to the void was? It was a real death. Everything turned into energy of nothingness. She would never come back. Really? Luo Shui's eyes were dull and her breathing stagnated. She couldn't accept this sudden news. Suyu nodded. Luo Shui's heart twitched uncontrollably. She asked, Is it because of me? Suyu patted her shoulder gently and said, It has nothing to do with you. It was the ancient god Julong who killed her. No matter what, Luo Shui was innocent. She shouldn't have been responsible for Xiaoya's death. Luo Shui's mood did not ease. She couldn't help but cover her face and burst into tears. But I didn't have time to say sorry. The guilt in her heart was indescribable. At this moment, she seemed to have returned to the time when her body was occupied by the Red Dust Path Master and Sukai was held hostage. She wanted to apologize, but no one listened. Suyu closed his eyes, his heart filled with sorrow. He also owed Qin Xian'er a hug. She had been waiting for his return in the heavenly court. But what awaited her was the ancient god Julong and eternal death. The two of them mourned for a long time, unable to extricate themselves. That was until a loud horn sounded. Suyu recovered from his guilt. He stood up and said, The dead are gone. What we have to do is face the future. Luo Shui clenched her fists tightly, letting her tears fall freely on them. May I ask, how can the ancient god Julong be killed? Her future was to kill ancient god Nine Dragon and avenge Qin Xian'er. When you have reached the pinnacle of the world, Suyu said as he flicked his sleeves and left. They arrived at the edge of the abyss. All living beings were ready. He just had to wait for the Tao Abyss's invitation to open a path to the Taichu Temple for all living beings in the abyss. Suyu's arrival. It attracted countless cheers. Their spirits were lifted as if they could see themselves stepping into a 9-star civilization. I hope that everyone can proceed in an orderly manner and not panic, so as to not cause any unnecessary chaos, Suyu said. He took out the Tao Abyss invitation from the Lord of Nirvana. With a light fling of his hand, he tossed the invitation letter into the abyss. Only the possessor of the invitation letter could successfully open the path to the abyss. They also decided whether they would allow the rest of the people to move forward. So you could walk over there by himself and cut off the other people's paths. Of course, he wouldn't do that. Just as he swore to the world, he would protect them until the last moment of their lives. Look up at the sky. Someone suddenly shouted. They subconsciously looked up. Golden light filled the air above his head. That was the remaining 500 holy mountains. In the past half a month, they had tried their best to brew the thunder of annihilation. Now it seemed that their thunder of annihilation was not fully brewed. It would take some time. However, Suyu sacrificed the blood of his heart and gave the people the aura of chaos at an incredible speed. The orderly holy mountains lost their composure. That was why they chose to take action before the thunder of annihilation was completed. Bang! The 500 holy mountains slowly separated, revealing cracks between each other. From the cracks, there was a thunderbolt that could destroy heaven and earth. In the thunderbolt, every trace of lightning was condensed from countless heavenly paths. It was destructive to all living beings. Rumble. A trace of lightning fell from it uncontrollably and smashed into the defensive formation of the inner abyss. As a result, a scene that made people feel like their souls were about to leave their bodies appeared. The formation of the inner abyss that the 500 holy mountains could not break even when they joined forces. The lightning bolt had actually easily melted a huge hole through it, and this was only a trace. The thunderbolt brewing in the holy mountains at this moment was not one trace, nor 500 traces, but 500. If all of it poured down, it would be enough to destroy the inner abyss in an instant. Except for Suyu and a group of peerless powerful beings, no one could survive. They would all die a violent death. Get ready to enter the abyss immediately. Suyu growled. Many peerless powerful beings felt their hearts in their throats. The endless people were even more terrified. What was fortunate was that the holy mountains had prepared too hastily. It would take half an hour for the thunder of annihilation to be released, and half an hour was enough for all the people to be transferred to the path of the abyss. Nirvana Lord, what are you doing? At this moment, some peerless powerful beings suddenly noticed the unusual behavior of the Nirvana Lord. They saw him rushing over from afar, but he did not have the patience to wait for the path of the abyss to open. Instead, he went straight to the falling invitation letter of the Tao Abyss. Yun Yazi and the others did not say a word and immediately chased after him, roaring in unison, "Stop!" What did the Nirvana Lord want to do at this moment of doomsday? But they were still a step too late. The Nirvana Lord grabbed the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss back into his hand. Then he quickly moved away from the abyss and the people. He stared at the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss, ignoring the angry will of the peerless powerful beings and the people. He said to himself, "Everything must be returned to its original owner. It is mine, so it should naturally return to my hands." The peerless powerful beings were furious. "You are despicable and shameless." While their attention was distracted by the holy mountain, he suddenly snatched the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss. The Demon Emperor said majestically, "Nirvana Lord, the people are in trouble. Quickly throw the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss down and give the people a way to live." The Nirvana Lord nodded. Of course. He threw the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss down again. The invitation letter of the Tao Abyss fell into the abyss and immediately caused the abyss water to splash. A road paved with ancient bluestone slabs hidden under the abyss slowly floated up from the abyss. Everyone was excited. Looking along the road, it really led straight to the Taichu Temple. It arrived at the most mysterious place. The Demon Emperor secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The Nirvana Lord was quite sensible and did not offend the people, as they thought so. The Nirvana Lord led his Nirvana worship and flew down the path of the abyss. The other peerless, powerful beings and the people did not dare to wait any longer and followed. But what no one expected was